Chapter 5:35. The fire thunder tiger roared furiously. A bloody wound was fiercely pierced on its body. A large amount of blood was dripping down. It roared furiously. It seemed that it was very dissatisfied that it had been injured by an ant that was far inferior to itself. It patrolled around but didn't find anything. Then, it resentfully turned into a red light and disappeared without a trace. No one had noticed that the strange mark on Tantan's forehead had strangely lit up when that spirit beast had appeared. But it had dimmed down after the spirit beast had disappeared. A few figures quickly flew out from the place where that emperor-level expert had leaped out. They collected the blood of the fire thunder tiger with their fastest speed. They didn't miss a single drop. They collected 2 big bottles in total. Everyone had a kind of suppressed joy in their hearts. Chu Yang suddenly realized something. So that's how it is. Those aristocratic clans are collecting the blood essence of spirit beasts. He couldn't help but feel a little sad. These aristocratic clans want to collect the blood essence of spirit beasts. Perhaps this is the only way. An expert sacrificed himself in exchange for a wound on the body of a spirit beast. And everyone doesn't make a move. They wait until the spirit beast has left. Then, they come out to collect the blood essence. They only need to sacrifice one person to get it. Immortals, how helpless can they be? A thin figure silently flew out. He took off his clothes and spread them on the snowy ground. He picked up the scattered bones and flesh of that emperor-level expert and put them into his clothes. He silently did these things. His face was filled with suppressed sadness. Ao Xie Yun. So, it's the Ao clan's people? Chu Yang recalled that he had seen the Ao clan's people lying in ambush like this some time ago. So, the Ao clan has been planning this all along. Chu Yang suddenly had an indescribable feeling in his heart when he saw Ao Xie Yun silently picking up the corpse of that fallen emperor-level expert. This Duke Xie still has a bit of conscience. It's not easy to do this even if it's pretentious. The Ao clan's people had finished collecting the scattered blood essence of spirit beasts. Then, everyone knelt on the ground under Ao Xie Yun's leadership. They silently kowtowed to the corpse that was wrapped in clothes. Then they stood up. Return immediately. Be careful of the Black Devil. Ao Xie Yun said in a deep voice. The experts of the Ao clan agreed at the same time. They quietly left. Ao Xie Yun walked at the back. His face was cold. Tears could be seen faintly. He took a few steps and looked back, but finally he was almost out of sight. He suddenly turned around, turned over, and knelt down. Then he kowtowed 3 times in the direction where that emperor-level expert had fallen. His body was bent over the ground, and he didn't make any sound. In the distance, the experts of the Ao clan were quietly waiting for their young master, and they didn't say a word. Finally, Ao Xie Yun stood up. He let out a long whistle and left without looking back. The group of people silently disappeared in the wind and snow, and disappeared from this world. This is what an aristocratic family is like. This is the foundation of a great family. Meng Qiaoran sighed. Chu Yang was silent for a long time. Then he finally said, "Yes, this is an aristocratic family. This is a true aristocratic family. If an aristocratic family wants to rise, it must go through the joint efforts of several generations. Only then would it slowly form a thing called foundation. The foundation didn't necessarily depend on how many experts the clan had. Instead, it was a concept, a belief. A clan with a solid foundation would give its clansmen a sense of identity, belonging, and glory. With this feeling, they would feel that they should do anything for the clan. And they would do it willingly. Just like the emperor-level expert of the Ao clan who had sacrificed himself today. Such a clan was worthy of being called an aristocratic family. So, a clan that had someone commit suicide can be called an aristocratic family. Tan seemed to understand something as he listened. But he still didn't understand. Chu Yang and Meng Qiaoran were stunned. The 3 of them finally arrived in front of this icy peak. They looked up and sucked in a mouthful of cold air. Hi. Just by looking at it, all the descriptive terms automatically popped up in everyone's mind. This entire mountain peak is like a sword. Tan Tan shook his head and stuck out his tongue. Who can use such a big sword? Chu Yang's heart moved. He turned his head and looked at him. The sword spirit in Chu Yang's mind space was also somewhat shocked. There should have been a fight here. Otherwise, that fire thunder tiger wouldn't have run out. Why is it so quiet now? Meng Ran was concerned about this matter. He had 2 younger brothers with him. So, he had no choice but to be cautious. Master Meng would get nervous if there was even the slightest movement. It didn't matter how high the cultivation of his younger brothers was. In Meng Ran's heart, they would always be children who needed his protection as long as he was by their side. He had the responsibility to protect them. The fire thunder tiger ran away. So, those people naturally wouldn't stay here. Chu Yang said, Master, there aren't many people in the upper 3 heavens who can make a fire thunder tiger run away. Moreover, I know that the only people who can do this are Dukyu and Jun Shizhu. They have already gone into closed-door training. Therefore, the people who forced the fire thunder tiger to come out must be experts of the upper 3 heavens. And their appearance here is in violation of the rules of the heavenly layer. Therefore, they won't foolishly wait here. They won't be able to escape in time. It would have been a big deal if they had been discovered by the law enforcers of the heavenly layer. Chu Yang explained tactfully. Well, it's good that there's no ambush. Meng Ran nodded. Are you sure you want to go in alone? Yang Yi pursed her lips. All right. You go. Tan Tan and I will wait for you there. Meng Ran pointed at a cave not far away. All right. Tan Tan was somewhat anxious when he saw Chu Yang turn around and leave. He stuck his head out and asked, Master, why didn't you let me go with you? Why would you go with me? Meng Ran looked at Chu Yang's gradually disappearing silhouette and said, Tan Tan, there's one thing you must remember. Everyone in this world has one or several secrets that they don't want others to know. And you shouldn't pry into this secret as long as this person doesn't harm you. That's because your prying will only harm others. And you'll lose even more. A person's curiosity is endless. It's just like a person's desire. Therefore, you must control it. Meng Ran deeply said, We live in Jianghu. So, we must remember this point even more. An ordinary person may suffer a blow because of their curiosity. But a person of Jianghu may lose his life because of his curiosity. Yes, Master. Tan Tan drooped his head. Meng Ran nodded and smiled. Chu Yang naturally wouldn't harm Tan Tan. But Meng Ran wanted to give his disciple a precaution first. He wanted to avoid suffering a big loss because of this in the future. I can't protect them forever. So, they have to walk their own path. The closer they got to the mountain peak, the more excited the sword spirit became. It's here. It's here. The sword spirit muttered in a neurotic manner. His whole body trembled as he moved. Where do we go in? Chu Yang was also a little excited. Go forward. Go down. The sword spirit instructed in his mind. Go in by force from here. The sword spirit impatiently shouted when they were halfway up the mountain. Go in from here. Then, use the calamity sword to dive down. It's at the bottom of this mountain. The sword spirit became excited. Chu Yang pulled out his long sword. The calamity sword quickly attached itself to the sword under his control. Then it plunged down. How much longer? It didn't take long for Chu Yang to go deep into the ground. He felt that the cold energy around him was getting heavier and heavier. So he asked. He couldn't help but ask because the calamity sword was slacking off a little. The calamity sword felt that this excavation wasn't beneficial to it. So, it was somewhat dissatisfied. The efficiency was greatly reduced. It was only after Chu Yang promised countless treasures that the calamity sword could continue working. During this process, the sword spirit was a little embarrassed. He lowered his head and didn't say a word. Sigh, I've caused the sword master to be chased for debt again. We still have to go down a few thousand feet. The sword spirit sensed for a moment and said excitedly, I can feel that the remnants of the sword spirit are also excited and looking forward to it. A few thousand feet. Chu Yang was shocked. He had already dived down nearly 10,000 feet. Yet he still hadn't reached the bottom. Could it be that he had to dig through the ground? It's only a few thousand feet. How can it be possible to dig through the ground? The sword spirit said honestly. Chu Yang rolled his eyes and continued to do the hard work. After going down another 3,000 feet, he finally dug through the solid ice ground. Soil actually began to appear below. There's also soil in the far north wilderness. Chu Yang was surprised. Which part of this land doesn't have soil? The sword spirit said somewhat disdainfully. But when he dug here, the calamity sword also became very excited. It was completely different from the previous lackadaisical and lifeless state of idleness. It dug happily. What's wrong? Chu Yang was a little puzzled. The calamity sword's sword tip, sword edge, and sword blade danced and trembled together. They were extremely happy. The sword spirit finally raised his eyebrows and said, "They feel that there's something good. Other than this, what else can make this bunch of greedy murderers so excited? They didn't even think about it. How can a sword land in an ordinary place? They're really ignorant." Chu Yang was stunned. Looking at the reactions of the sword spirit and the calamity sword, could it be that this time, they would actually find some incredible treasure? Chu Yang's heart suddenly became very excited. To be able to make the calamity sword move like this? Could it be one of the great miraculous medicines? Thinking of this, he continued to dig without stopping. Under the crazy digging of the calamity sword, the distance of 3,000 feet was dug through in a short period of time. Below, after removing a layer of stone slab, there was actually a large and dry space. A sword light danced in this space, like a divine dragon. It was out of this world. Chu Yang entered through it. The sword light that was swimming in the space suddenly stopped. Then, it emitted a rainbow-colored light. It slowly condensed and rippled a few times. It turned into an illusory figure in a white sword robe. Its facial features slowly emerged. Chu Yang suddenly realized that it looked almost the same as the sword spirit in his mind. At this moment, this figure was examining Chu Yang with sword-like eyes. Then it asked, "This is the calamity sword master of this life." Chapter 5:36. A voice came from Chu Yang's body. It was the sword spirit's voice. It sounded a little surprised. "This is the calamity sword master of this generation. You are just a remnant soul. How can you have your own consciousness? Too weak." The remnant soul looked at Chu Yang disdainfully. It ignored the sword spirit's question. How could it look down on the original body? The sword spirit was silent. Apparently, he felt that something was wrong. Chu Yang could feel the anger on the sword spirit's face. It seemed that the sword spirit was extremely angry. Which generation's calamity sword master is this? The sword spirit asked arrogantly. Its attitude was very arrogant. Chu Yang looked at the sword spirit with interest. He felt that this guy had quite a character. The sword spirit said coldly, "Don't you know how many years you have been here?" The sword spirit sneered. "I followed the first calamity sword master. But I didn't follow the second one. I followed the third one. I didn't follow the fourth one. I followed the fifth one. But after the fifth one I was here. Who the fuck knows which generation this is?" "This is the first calamity sword master." The sword spirit said deeply, "It is also our chance." Chance? The sword spirit sneered. "I felt that the original body was here. I was still very excited. But this calamity sword master is so weak. I am really disappointed." "Don't be presumptuous." The sword spirit shouted. "If you don't return to your position, what are you waiting for?" "Return to my position?" The sword spirit hesitated and sighed. "Let me stay here. I really can't see any hope if I go out with him." Chu Yang's body shook fiercely. The sword spirit had escaped from this space. A black shadow flashed out from the surface of Chu Yang's body and grabbed the sword spirit. "Come here." The illusory shadow flashed and turned into a sword light again. The sword spirit said, "Don't force me." The sword spirit was furious and said, "You are a remnant soul of mine. Why do you want to fight with the original body now? I also want to roam the world with you, but this calamity sword master is too weak. I also want to roam the world with you, but this Calamity Sword Master is too weak. I want to be with you too. The incomplete sword soul recited in a poetic manner. Then it said solemnly, therefore I think that it would be better for you to stay here. You and I can become one. With me as the master, we can dominate the heavens. You still want to be independent? You want to lure me here and devour me? You're still thinking about the sword spirit of the great success stage. The sword spirit was unable to restrain his anger and pounced over. With a shake of his body in midair, he transformed into a hazy sword gleam. The two sword lights clashed fiercely. Chu Yang sighed. He felt speechless. After going through so much trouble to come down here, he actually caused such a thing. It turned out that this guy wanted to devour the sword spirit instead. With a chong sound, the sword tip of the tribulation sword appeared in his dantian, flickering with light. The sword's edge suddenly rose and appeared on Chu Yang's forehead. It was glistening with light. The sword blade flew up and stuck to Chu Yang's chest. A ferocious and majestic force surged out. The upper and lower parts of the sword seemed to form a line. A monstrous murderous aura swarmed out and protected Chu Yang's entire body. The two sword lights chased each other in that space. It couldn't be seen clearly which one had the upper hand. Rays of light flashed chaotically in the entire space. It seemed as if countless stars had suddenly gathered in this narrow space and were flickering crazily. With a loud, clang sound, the black sword spirit drifted backwards. That white sword light staggered and tumbled backwards. It seemed that the sword spirit's main body was more skillful after all. That white sword light staggered backwards. The sword light had somewhat dimmed. Suddenly, he flipped over and darted into a corner of this space like a bolt of lightning. Unexpectedly, there was a tsch sound, and water splashed out. Then, the white sword light rushed out and laughed. Main body, you should obey me. You can't defeat me here. The sword spirit's eyes widened. He said in shock, soul-quenching spring? No wonder you deliberately lured me here. It turns out that there's a soul-quenching spring here. He gnashed his teeth as he spoke the last few words. I can recover immediately every time I get injured with the soul-quenching spring here. But you can't. The incomplete sword spirit proudly smiled. And this spring is behind me. I've placed a restriction on it. So, you don't have a chance to touch it. And nothing can touch this soul-quenching spring except for the soul. The incomplete sword spirit suddenly issued a cruel sword cry and said, you're consuming your energy at all times. And I can always maintain my peak condition. So, what can you do even if you're stronger than me? Do you have any chance of winning? The sword light transformed by the sword spirit scattered. It had obviously hit a sore spot. Chu Yang's mind moved. He thought, what is this soul-quenching spring? Can it quench the soul? The sword point stealthily throbbed in his dantian and signaled him to come over. Chu Yang forced a smile. This soul-quenching spring has clearly stated that nothing can touch it except for the soul. So, what's the use of going over there? The sword point continued to urge him. It was throbbing more and more intensely. Chu Yang sighed. He thought, I'll go over and take a look. There's nothing I can do about it. He moved his feet and walked over there. The incomplete sword spirit saw that Chu Yang was walking toward the soul-quenching spring. Suddenly, it emitted a fierce aura and said, let me destroy this body first. There's no harm in that. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning shot over. Chu Yang suddenly felt cold all over. A cold aura of death suddenly shrouded his heart. Under the attack of this incomplete sword spirit, Chu Yang couldn't even move a finger. However, the tribulation sword seemed to have expected this. So, it jumped out of his dantian in advance. The sword point of the tribulation sword let out a long cry and suddenly jumped up. The sword edge suddenly followed, and the sword edge stretched across the air. The three sections of the sword flashed in the air. A fierce aura of eternity rippled out. It turned into a black gas and greeted the wisp of sword spirit. The incomplete sword spirit retreated. It seemed to have some misgivings. It snorted, I didn't expect this guy to have refined 3 sections. Well, I won't touch him with your protection. Humph, even if he gets there, can he touch the soul-quenching spring in his human form? He won't even see it. Pa. Suddenly it changed its tone and said, but this little one is a little interesting. He can make the tribulation sword so obedient. This is something that hasn't happened in 10,000 years. How about this little one? Although you are very weak, if you let me devour that guy, and then I will enter your tribulation space, I will help you to dominate the heavens and break through the cage of the heavens. How about it? It laughed strangely and said, you should know that what I said is something that this good-for-nothing on your body can't do. It doesn't dare to do it. Chu Yang straightened his body. His eyes were like lightning. He said indifferently, weak or strong, I am the sword master. And you are just a sword spirit, and an incomplete one at that. Weak or strong, a sword spirit like you who doesn't listen to orders and wants to rebel, no matter how strong you are, I will only refuse and kill you. You don't deserve to follow me. The incomplete sword spirit screamed fiercely in the air. It shouted furiously, I don't deserve to? I don't deserve to? Suddenly, it turned into a sword light and rushed over crazily, I will kill you first. You puny teacher? The sword spirit let out a sword cry and rushed over. It caught up with the incomplete sword spirit at the speed of light and blocked it in midair. The two sword lights tangled together again. This time, the battle was even more intense. Chu Yang shook his head gently and said indifferently, you don't deserve to be my sword spirit. No matter how strong you are, you still don't deserve to be my sword spirit. How can I allow you to control my path? He snorted and said silently in his heart, even if you are a god, you still can't. Immediately after, he no longer paid any attention to the incomplete sword soul and quickly rushed to the corner. To his surprise, he discovered that in the corner, there was a small and hazy spring. It was only the size of a fist and water was gurgling out from it. This water, it was a bit of a stretch to say that it was water, because the water that came out of it was like smoke. It could be blown away with a breath. But it was indeed water. What is this? Can this be considered water? Chu Yang touched his chin and looked at the small spring in front of him. He thought, how can I prevent the sword spirit from quenching his sword spirit again? Also, didn't the incomplete sword spirit say that I shouldn't be able to see it? Why can I see it so clearly? The sword spirit was fighting. When he saw that Chu Yang had reached the soul-quenching spring under the sword spirit's carelessness, he couldn't help but be overjoyed. He shouted, use your palm to block the spring and then put it into the tribulation space. Block the spring? Pa. The incomplete sword spirit laughed. Do you think he is a soul? Dream on. The sword spirit sneered and looked at him with pitiful and hateful eyes. He laughed and said, I forgot to tell you. This tribulation sword master is a person who has been reborn. He has lived 2 lives. In other words, his soul is the superposition of the souls of 2 lives. The soul of his previous life has returned to the age of 17 with his memories. He has not been reincarnated. With a clang, the incomplete sword spirit staggered back and said in shock, a tribulation sword master who has been reborn? The sword spirit didn't relax and pressed forward. His attacks became sharper and sharper. He sneered, in other words, he can use the soul-quenching spring if we can. Not only can he see it, but he can also touch it. The incomplete sword spirit screamed and said in a daze, how can this be? How can this be? Suddenly, the sword light flashed and the illusory figure was restored. He pointed at the sword spirit and shouted angrily, you, why didn't you say so earlier? Say so earlier? If I had said so earlier, you wouldn't have shown your wild ambition. The sword spirit said coldly. At this time, Chu Yang had already covered the soul-quenching spring with his right palm. He said in his heart, withdraw. Suddenly, he felt a wave of exhaustion in his divine soul. This kind of exhaustion was as if he had walked thousands of miles without eating or drinking. Even his mind was a little fuzzy at this moment. However, in the tribulation space, there was a spring next to the vitality spring. The spring water was like smoke, curling up and covering the spring. It didn't disperse for a long time. Chapter 537. Ah, the incomplete sword's soul roared in grief and despair. It's gone, my soul-quenching spring. It suddenly transformed into countless sharp sword lights and rushed towards Chu Yang. The sword point, sword edge, and sword edge attacked at the same time. The incomplete sword soul was sent flying with a loud bang. But the sword spirit followed it like a shadow and tangled it up again. The two soul bodies were fighting, and a bang 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 sound was heard. The incomplete sword soul screamed in despair, "Spare me! I surrender! I'm willing to serve Lord Sword Master to the best of my ability. Spare me! Don't fight! Don't devour me!" The incomplete sword soul screamed in panic. "I've been here alone for 10,000 years, 10,000 years. I also followed the sword masters in those days and made great contributions." The incomplete sword soul was dodging with all his might. He was in a very difficult situation. His previous arrogance and drive had disappeared without a trace. One would have been able to see his face full of tears and snot if he had transformed into his human form. The sword spirit didn't relax. He chased after him. "I gave you a chance. You betrayed the sword master, betrayed the sword body, and betrayed the main body." The sword spirit roared. He launched a tide-like attack. "I won't show any mercy. I'll take you back forever today. Spare me, sword master, spare me." The incomplete sword soul saw that the sword spirit didn't relax. So, he was obviously ruthless. So, he started to beg for mercy from Chu Yang. "Look at the fact that I've cultivated spiritual wisdom for 10,000 years. Suddenly, a mournful scream was heard. And it turned into a desperate sword cry. The sword spirit and the incomplete sword soul were entangled together. It could be seen that the two sword lights were desperately entangled. One was desperately trying to entangle and devour the other. And the other was desperately trying to escape. But how could the sword spirit relax? The two sword lights were entangled together. They rolled and rolled from east to west, and from south to north. Eventually, the sound of the struggle subsided. The sword spirit said in a complacent voice, "You've cultivated spiritual wisdom for 10,000 years. What are you showing off for?" The sword lights changed. They were strange and variegated. The sword spirit appeared in front of Chu Yang with a schwa sound. He could actually appear in this space. The incomplete sword soul had been completely devoured by it. The wisp of intelligence that had only appeared after 10,000 years of cultivation had been completely destroyed and no longer existed. Chu Yang looked at him and felt that he had changed again. He was clearly more solid than when he was in the mental space. If he didn't know that this was a spiritual body, Chu Yang would have thought that the person in front of him was a living person with flesh and blood. "My soul is complete." The sword spirit exposed an extremely human-like smile on his face. He then said to Chu Yang, "But I still need to nourish this guy for a while before I can completely absorb him." Chu Yang asked, "What is the soul-quenching spring?" The sword spirit remained silent for a while. Then he finally said, "The soul-quenching spring doesn't belong to this world." He thought for a while, as if he was organizing his thoughts, and said, "For a long time, there has been a legend in the Chongtian continent, that is, after a person dies, his soul will remain. As for the soul, there was another world. In this world, the common people referred to it as the underworld. Or perhaps the netherworld." "Does the netherworld really exist?" Chu Yang asked in astonishment. "The netherworld doesn't exist," the sword spirit said, "but the netherworld exists." "What do you mean?" Chu Yang felt a little dizzy. "Aren't they the same place?" "The netherworld is the netherworld. It's different from the netherworld in the legends." The sword spirit insipidly said, "It's true that a person has a soul after he dies. But the soul of an ordinary person dissipates before it can reach the netherworld. Therefore, only some relatively powerful souls can reach there. It's a strange place. No one can describe the specific things there." The sword spirit forced a smile and said, "I haven't been there either. But I've heard about it from Sir." "Sir?" Chu Yang sensitively grasped this word and asked, What, sir? Sir? The sword spirit said hesitantly, It's... I'm sorry, Sir Sword Lord. I can't tell you this. You haven't reached that level yet. Chu Yang looked at him with his eagle-like eyes for a long time. Then he closed his eyes and nodded in understanding. He said, Continue. The netherworld is in charge of spirits. It has a spring called Ascending Spirit Pond. Spirits with good luck are promoted by the netherworld. And they are allowed to soak in the Ascending Spirit Pond when they are ready to assume a position there. Their souls become far more condensed than ordinary spirits after they soak in it. Then they become managers. The sword spirit stuttered as he spoke. He had clearly skipped a lot of things. Chu Yang didn't ask further. He just listened quietly. And this spring water is a branch of the Ascending Spirit Pond. I don't know why it appeared here, but it became the soul-quenching spring. And this soul-quenching spring also has the function of the Ascending Spirit Pond. It can condense the soul. The sword spirit spoke a lot more fluently as he said this. Sir Sword Lord, you mustn't underestimate this soul-quenching spring. Its benefits to you are incomparable. It's also beneficial to me? Chu Yang curiously asked. The sword spirit said, Sir, you have lived 2 lives. It's like a dream. But it's still the superposition of 2 lives. Therefore, Sir Soul can also use this soul-quenching spring to cleanse and condense the spirit god. The body dies as the soul, and the life becomes the spirit god. The sword spirit said, and the function of the spirit god is to control the life and death of a person. In fact, it's also beneficial to Sir Sword Lord's future path. He began to stutter as he spoke. Chu Yang slightly smiled. His expression was somewhat unfathomable. He insipidly said, I know about the spirit god. And I also know about the benefits of condensing the spirit god. This soul-quenching spring is also a rare treasure. Even the tribulation sword can be placed inside it to be quenched. I also want to obtain this. But I didn't expect that you'd hide so many things from me. So many secrets. Chu Yang insipidly said, This makes me feel very uncomfortable. The sword spirit remained silent for a moment. Then he said, Sir Sword Lord, you're overthinking. I didn't have any bad intentions even though I hid them from you. He raised his head and softly said, I've accompanied the sword lords of the past for 10,000 years. And I haven't done anything to let down the tribulation sword lord. I would have been obliterated a long time ago if I had. The sword spirit smiled bleakly. This smile seemed to contain endless helplessness and countless secrets that couldn't be revealed. Chu Yang grunted but didn't comment. There are many things that I can't tell you now. That's because your cultivation is too low. Your spirit god isn't stable. Your soul root isn't solid. So, I'll only harm you if I tell you. The sword spirit heaved a long sigh. Take the heaven layer as an example. Martial great master is supreme in some places. And revered martial artist is the peak in some places. You'll realize that martial great masters and revered martial artists are nothing but farts in this vast world. In the lower 3 heavens, king-level experts were considered supreme experts. Diwu Qing Ro only led 4 king-level experts, and established the Golden Horse Riders department that swept the world. But king-level experts can't be said to be everywhere in the lower 3 heavens. But they've become ordinary people. The sword spirit smiled. The strength of the lower 3 heavens is relatively average. But there are also people like Duke Yu and Jun Shizhu. Every big clan also has an emperor-level expert. Some clans even have hidden monarch-level experts. These are things that you can't imagine in the lower 3 heavens. But this is still a small Jianghu. You'll only know how big this world is when you go to the upper 3 heavens and experience some things. Then you'll know what the real heaven layer is. But these things are too far away from you now. The sword spirit looked at him sincerely, knowing too much isn't good for your state of mind. It's just like a martial disciple who hears about the existence of a revered martial artist. He'll only think that it's too far away. I won't be able to reach such a level in my entire life. Such a thought will become an inner demon even if it arises once. The sword spirit continued, moreover, some things can't be said clearly. Chu Yang remained silent for a long time. Then he said, I understand. A certain level of cultivation, a certain status, and a certain level of perception could allow one to enter a certain circle and know certain things. It's just like a beggar would never know how a landlord lives. A landlord would never know how a high-ranking official lives. And it's even more impossible to imagine the extravagant desires of the royal family. This is the so-called level, right? Chu Yang quietly sighed in his heart. The sword spirit heaved a sigh of relief. Then he transformed into a wisp of green smoke and floated into Chu Yang's body. The sword spirit was entrenched in his sea of consciousness. He could have entered even if Chu Yang hadn't agreed. But this was a kind of attitude. The sword spirit felt that it was necessary to explain this matter clearly regardless of whether Chu Yang believed it or not. The sword spirit immediately used the mysterious jade ice crystal to make a pool after entering the tribulation space. He drew the cloud-like spring water from the soul-quenching spring into it. Then he soaked himself in it. He immediately let out a comfortable moan. The soul-quenching spring was an item of the netherworld. But the sword spirit had the final say once it entered the tribulation space. It was no wonder that he was so extravagant. A light flashed. The sword point, sword edge, and sword edge impatiently lined up to enter the soul-quenching spring's eye. These three bandits. The sword spirit angrily scolded. Chu Yang was meditating outside. He had only casually warned the sword spirit about this matter. He didn't want to do anything else. After all, the sword spirit was now in his sea of consciousness. So, what could he do even if he was dissatisfied? He couldn't expel the sword spirit even if he wanted to. But he was now thinking about something the sword spirit had said. This sentence made him feel somewhat flustered. In fact, he even felt a faint fear. Sir, you've lived 2 lives. It's like a dream. But it's still the superposition of 2 lives. The superposition of 2 lives. This sentence made Chu Yang fearful. If these 2 lives aren't just 1 life? Qingwu? Is the Qingwu of this life the Qingwu of the previous life? If not, who is the Qingwu of this life? If not, where is the Qingwu of the previous life? Isn't the existence of this life contradictory to the existence of the previous life? If not, then do I love the Qingwu of the previous life or the Qingwu of this life? Chapter 5:38. Chu Yang was at a loss. He was in pain. He pulled his hair with a painful look on his face. Sword Lord, you can enter this soul-quenching spring now. Sword Spirit's voice came over. How can I enter? Chu Yang asked unconsciously. You just need to sleep. Then I can send your divine spirit into the soul-quenching spring. Sword Spirit said, however, your divine spirit can only soak in it once every 3 days for a month. You can achieve the initial stability of your divine spirit. If you want to go further, you will need to reach the monarch level. Then, you will need to consolidate your divine spirit again. Oh, I see. Chu Yang responded. Then he lay down in this space. He not only wanted to soak in the soul-quenching spring, but he also wanted to ask Sword Spirit the question that he was most worried about. Therefore, he lay down even though he knew that Meng Churan and Tan Tan were waiting anxiously outside. Chu Yang's mind was in a daze. He felt that he was spinning. It seemed as if he had been pulled out of his body. He felt inexplicably relaxed. Then Chu Yang found himself in the tribulation space. He had another body. However, his body was very light and weak. In fact, it seemed as if it could be blown away with a single breath. It was many times worse than Sword Spirit's body, which was almost the same as that of an ordinary person. He saw that there was another pool beside the pool where Sword Spirit's body had been soaking. Mist was rising from it, and it was exuding a blurry color. It seemed as if he had entered a dream. Sword Spirit was hinting Chu Yang to lie down in that pool. Chu Yang's mind moved, and he felt that he was floating. He slowly floated towards this soul-quenching spring. He stopped above the soul-quenching spring. Then he slowly descended and came in contact with the fog-like spring water. He felt that his divine spirit's surroundings had become sticky. Moreover, a sharp pain had pierced into the depths of his divine spirit. This pain pervaded his entire body in an instant. Then he felt pain all over his body. He couldn't bear it any longer and wanted to jump up. However, he couldn't jump up. His body was moving slowly. However, he resolutely sank down into the soul-quenching spring. He came in contact with the mysterious jade ice crystal at the bottom of the pool. Then he bounced up and floated in the middle of the pool. His entire body began to hurt, and the pain became more and more intense. This spring water seemed to have evoked countless pain in his body. It was as if all the pain from his previous life, from when he was young to now, were being relived at this moment. Chu Yang felt that he was in so much pain that he was rolling in the water, but he couldn't make a sound. He only felt that his whole body was being incinerated and then being reassembled. It was as if something was growing, but also as if something was disappearing. The only thing Chu Yang could do was to close his mouth tightly and not let himself scream. No matter how much pain he suffered, could it be more painful than watching his soul shatter in front of his own eyes? Could it be even more painful than when he lost Jianghu in his previous life? Chu Yang didn't say a word. It hurts. If you have the ability, then let me die from the pain. If you can't kill me from the pain, I'll endure it. Rush over. Endure it. This kind of extreme pain continued. It lasted for an hour before it began to weaken slightly. In this 1 hour, Chu Yang felt as if he had endured hundreds of dismemberments. Furthermore, he had been dismembered while he was still conscious. But he had been holding it in. Chu Yang regarded this kind of pain as a challenge to himself. If he couldn't even overcome his own sense of pain, who could he defeat? He must win. This is the pain of spiritual deity. Your willpower is really amazing. Even the spiritual deity of immortals wouldn't be able to endure such pain. I didn't expect that you would be able to endure it without making a sound. The sword spirit's voice reached his ears. Chu Yang wanted to laugh, but then he discovered that his entire face had become stiff even though he was in the state of spiritual deity. Not only could he not laugh, but he couldn't even speak. Even his tongue had become stiff. It was slowly recovering now. He heard the sword spirit slowly say, "A person's spiritual deity is complete only when he is born with innate energy." The sword spirit understood Chu Yang's current situation very well. So, he didn't wait for Chu Yang to reply, and continued to speak. A person's spiritual deity will begin to wear down when they come into contact with the secular world. They will wear down their spiritual deity bit by bit from some minor details until it becomes a soul that can fully adapt to the secular world. Then, the transformation will be complete. This transformation is an adaptation to the secular world. But, it's also the cruelest injury to one's spiritual deity. And, the things that a person loses in this process will always be much more than what they gain. A person's spiritual deity will be exhausted when they die. Only a soul body will be left, and there will be no deity. The sword spirit slowly said, "Therefore, such a soul body will gradually dissipate in the world after it leaves the body. And, it will transform into pure spiritual energy of the world." It said that no matter who it is, they will reincarnate after they die. But, such a thing doesn't exist. In other words, it's not common. That's because some people are qualified, but most of them aren't. Even a supreme expert spiritual deity will never be complete. His spiritual deity will be extremely powerful, and he will even master the method of tempering his spiritual deity. That's because he will have lost too much of his spiritual deity before he can form it. And this is where his weakness lies. You'll be invincible when you have a certain amount of strength if you can master this weakness. But, you have the soul-quenching spring now. So, it's very different. You're feeling pain now because you're infatuated with this secular world. And you've clearly felt the sacrifice of your spiritual deity. The function of the soul-quenching spring is to replenish your lost spiritual deity. And you'll return to your initial innate spiritual deity. You'll be able to start the cultivation of spiritual deity only after you've returned to your innate spiritual deity form. You're lucky that your spiritual deity hasn't been completely worn down yet. Perhaps it's because of your persistence after your rebirth that everything is under your control. So, everyone has to adapt to you. And you don't have to adapt to others and adapt to the world. Therefore, your spiritual deity is more complete than an ordinary person's. And you've obtained the soul-quenching spring at such a time. This is the most powerful foundation for becoming a matchless powerhouse. The sword spirit's voice was heavy, but it seemed to have a strange charm that went straight into the depths of Chu Yang's soul. But you've still lost a lot of spiritual deity even so. So, you need to go through this painful process once every 3 days. And this process will continue for a month. Then, you'll be able to replenish your spiritual deity at this stage. The sword spirit sighed in his heart as he spoke. How could the previous masters of the Tribulation Sword have such heaven-defying luck to repair their spiritual deity? Some of them didn't even get the incomplete sword's soul. But this one's luck. The sword spirit sighed. One can't compare with another. The extreme pain lasted for an hour. Then, the stiffness of his whole body gradually dissipated. Chu Yang finally came out of the water. He felt that his whole body was brimming with vitality. And this feeling was completely different from when he had first come in. He could finally open his mouth and speak. I know everything about the spiritual deity. Sword Spirit, I have a question that I need you to answer, Chu Yang said in a heavy voice. He didn't realize that his voice was trembling. Please speak. Just now, you said that I've lived 2 lives. Now, I'm the superposition of 2 lives. What does this mean? Chu Yang asked slowly. Do I still need to explain? The sword spirit was a little dizzy. Don't you know it clearly? You're a reborn person. What I mean is, what's the difference between this life and my previous life? Chu Yang said in distress. In other words, does that life still exist? The sword spirit was startled for a long time. Then he finally understood this extremely abstruse question. This is very difficult to explain. The sword spirit thought for a long time. But he didn't know how to answer this question. That life still exists. Chu Yang's heart trembled. That era did exist. The sword spirit said affirmatively, because you came from that life. How could you come here if that life didn't exist? Or, how could you exist? Exist? Chu Yang suddenly felt that he had no strength in his body. He muttered, doesn't that mean that Jianghu is still dead no matter how hard I try? She's already dead in that life? The current Jianghu is another person no matter how much I try to compensate her or how much I love her. And she's not my beloved Jianghu from my previous life? The sword spirit replied in a heavy tone, your conclusion is very, very wrong. Wrong? Chu Yang asked. The sword spirit was silent for a long time. Then he said, I'll give you an example. Your life is like this. But you have a dream one night when you're 10 years old. And you dream of all the things that you're about to experience in your life. There's sorrow, there's joy, there's anger, and there's hatred. There's love and hatred. You see the end of your life in your dream. Then you wake up from this dream and find that you're still in this reality. The sword spirit cautiously said, do you understand what I'm saying? I understand. Chu Yang nodded. He listened carefully. You'll find that it's the same as your dream as long as you experience a little bit of things after you wake up, the sword spirit said. So, you'll find that your dream is real. Those tragedies will happen to you sooner or later. But you have enough time to change now. Will you change it? The sword spirit asked. Of course I will. Chu Yang replied without hesitation. So, you'll use the foresight of your dream to change the pain and regret that you're about to encounter. You'll be more cautious in this life if you have such a clear dream as a guide. You won't make the mistakes that you've made in your dreams again. Moreover, you'll think thrice before you make any other mistakes. You won't act blindly without thinking. The sword spirit said. Yes, Chu Yang admitted. So, you'll be a perfect person in this life after you have such a dream. You'll be perfect to a certain extent. You won't make any mistakes. Moreover, you'll gradually become stronger. Chapter 539. Sword Spirit let out a long sigh. There are too many paths in life. You walked this path in your dream, and that's why you met those people and those things. But when you woke up and found out that this path was wrong, would you still walk on it? I wouldn't. Yes, so you changed your path. So, even though your dream is the same, the end and the process are different. Sword Spirit said deeply, this is the difference between different paths. So, the people you met and the things you went through are also different. So, Beyond the Heavens sect was destroyed in your previous life, and Meng Chao ran and Wu Yunliang died. But, these two people didn't die in this life, and Beyond the Heavens sect became the #1 sect in the lower 3 heavens. So, Wu Qianqian agreed to Shi Qianshan's marriage proposal in order to cooperate with his work in Iron Cloud, and sacrificed herself for Beyond the Heavens sect. But she didn't do that in this life. So, Tai Bu Tian died in your previous life, and Di Wu Qing Ro won. But this life is different. In your previous life, Gu Du Xing and the others became famous 10 or 20 years later, and they became as famous as Dark Bamboo. But this life is different. So many things didn't happen in the lower 3 heavens in that life, but they happened in this life. Mo Qing Wu died in your dream. But she is now the common disciple of 2 supreme-level experts. You know, all of this is because of you, Sword Spirit said indifferently, because you had such a strange dream. So, there is no difference between this life and the previous life. The only difference is that you're yourself. This life is the previous life. The previous life did exist, but it only existed in your dreams. Chu Yang listened silently and thought silently. He didn't say a word. I just want to ask, is the current Qing Wu the same as the previous Qing Wu? Chu Yang asked in a low voice. You shouldn't ask this question. Sword Spirit said, let me ask you, if you didn't do anything in this life, and followed the path of your previous life, and practiced the emotionless sword way, Mo Qing Wu wouldn't have died. If you didn't do those things in this life, what would Mo Qing Wu be like now? Would she be so lively and cute? If it weren't for the dreaming of a gentle dance saber, if she hadn't met Mo Qing Wu in Iron Cloud, would there still be any color left in her life? She could only become the depressed Mo Qing Wu from her previous life. Then, after a certain period of time, I will meet you and die for you. But why do you want to go to Iron Cloud? Have you been there in your previous life? Sword Spirit snorted and said, you met Mo Qing Wu in your previous life 8.5 years later, even if you start counting from now. Have you thought about all these? Chu Yang remained silent for a long time. Then, a smile slowly appeared on his face. He said, so that's how it is. I've been letting my imagination run wild. I've been worrying for nothing. The sky is still the same sky, the earth is still the same earth, Qing Wu is still Qing Wu, but I have changed myself. That's all, Chu Yang said softly. After saying this, he suddenly felt his heart lighten up. The Sword Spirit gently smiled and said, that's right. Whether it's your past life or your present life, or whether it's a dream or something else, you'll naturally know what's going on in the future. You asked me one question, but I answered you so much. Can I ask you a question? Go ahead, Chu Yang said straightforwardly. He was in a good mood. Well, you've always been thinking about Mo Qing Wu. You've always only had Mo Qing Wu in your heart. For this reason, you didn't hesitate to hide your face in the lower 3 heavens. You didn't want to come in contact with women. You also kept a respectful distance from Wu Qianqian, who was deeply in love with you, the Sword Spirit slowly asked. You naturally thought that everything you did was for Mo Qing Wu, and that the true love of your heart was only Mo Qing Wu. But, if Mo Qing Wu hadn't died in your previous life, and was in harmony with you, would you still be so obsessed with her in this life? In your heart, do you feel more guilty about Mo Qing Wu? Or do you love Mo Qing Wu more? The Sword Spirit slowly asked. Chu Yang was stunned. He was stunned for a long time, and didn't speak. Guilt? Guilt because of love? Love because of guilt? The lovely images of Jianghu in this life flashed in front of his eyes. Brother Chuyang, I miss you so much. Brother Chuyang, will you wait for me? Brother Chuyang, I finally see you, Brother Chuyang. It's so nice to be hugged by you. While he was thinking, a figure in red suddenly appeared. There was a faint sadness and sorrow on her face. She was graceful and gentle, her eyes were full of stubbornness and unrepentance, and she was looking at him in a daze. A lifetime of not dancing, a lifetime of suffering. Chuyang cried out in pain. Then, he found that his divine spirit had left the tribulation space and returned to his body. Now, he sat up abruptly, and his whole body was drenched in cold sweat. He was panting heavily. For a long time, he was still thinking about this question. Gradually, Chuyang's mind calmed down, and he actually smiled softly. He sat like this and said softly to himself, "Guilt because of love, love because of guilt, what's the difference? Two people in love have to go through a lot of things before they can be together and love each other deeply. The so-called love at first sight has to go through the tribulations of the secular world before it can be confirmed whether they are together or not. Whether it's love because of guilt or guilt because of love, in short, the current Jianghu is still the Jianghu of my previous life. As long as it's Jianghu, I like her, and that's enough. Why do I have to think so much?" It seemed as if he was talking to himself, and also as if he was answering the sword spirit's question. However, his heart was unprecedentedly relaxed. Then he stood up and walked out. Then Chuyang found that he seemed to be different from before. However, he couldn't tell what was different about it. But he could be sure that the touch of his skin was different. He could even feel the airflow flowing in this sealed space. When it flowed through his exposed skin, he could clearly feel where it was strong and where it was weak. He could clearly feel where it was strong and where it was weak. And this was something that he couldn't feel in the past. It seemed as if some of his damaged nerves were slowly recovering, and were slowly recovering. Chuyang's body suddenly emitted the aura of a breakthrough, and the dense mist drifted in the air. He had broken through to the 5th grade of Sword King at this moment. Moreover, he didn't feel the tearing sensation of breaking through the bottleneck this time. It seemed as if he had made a natural breakthrough. Could it be that soaking in the soul-quenching spring has such a powerful effect? Chuyang was overjoyed. He knew that this was the effect of the soul-quenching spring. So, he couldn't help but look forward to the results after a month. Let's not talk about what level my cultivation will rise to by then. Such a sensitive sense of touch will be of great use to me when I travel in Jianghu and fight with the enemy. That's because I can feel every minute detail. There won't be any hidden killer move that can hide from my sense of touch if I can make full use of this feeling. And there won't be any hidden enemy that can hide from my sense of touch. This is a supreme magic weapon that can defeat the enemy. The wonderful effect of the divine spirit is extremely powerful. He was pleasantly surprised. Then he quickly walked outside. "How long have I been here?" Master and Tan must be anxious, right? Meng Chao Ran was indeed anxious. Chuyang had been in the mountain for 8 days. But there hadn't been any movement. How could Meng Chao Ran not be anxious? He was so anxious that he was running around in circles. He wished that he could rush in and take a look. However, Meng Chao Ran became even more anxious when he couldn't help but want to rush in. That's because something had happened to Tan. The situation this time was even more bizarre. Tan suddenly didn't like to eat. Not only did he not like to eat, but he also liked to eat some strange things. Moreover, he had an incomparable thirst for them. Meng Chao Ran had sent Tan out to hunt 3 snow pheasants on the morning of the first day Chuyang had entered the mountain. Then he personally roasted them and prepared to eat heartily with his disciple. However, he suddenly discovered that Tan was somewhat absent-minded when the snow pheasants were roasted. Tan didn't look as embarrassed as he used to be when he saw food. Instead, he looked bored and kept burping. "What's going on? Is this my disciple who looks like a hungry ghost when he sees delicious food?" Meng Chao Ran called Tan to eat 2 mouthfuls. But Tan looked as if he couldn't eat. This made Meng Chao Ran even more surprised. "What's wrong with you?" He touched his head. You don't have a fever. I don't want to eat this. Tan Tan was also depressed. Why don't I want to eat? I'm hungry for a meal. I'm very hungry. But I'm burping when I see snow pheasants. This is too bizarre. Eventually, Tan Tan sat down on his luggage in a depressed manner. But he touched his own package. He had collected the inner cores of spirit beasts like a money grubber. There were no less than 100 of them. Tan Tan didn't realize that his eyes were emitting a green light. It was as if a pervert who had been thirsty for more than 20 years had suddenly seen a naked beauty. Then, Tan Tan impatiently opened his package. Meng Chao Ran was eating meat. He was holding a complete snow pheasant's head in his hand. He looked at his disciple in a daze as he stuffed a fist-sized inner core of a spirit beast into his mouth. Then he looked satisfied. Meng Chao Ran saw that Tan Tan's neck had swelled up like a small snake that had swallowed an egg. Then his neck started to fall down. Meng Chao Ran's hand trembled and stuffed the entire chicken's head into his mouth. Then he unconsciously stretched his neck and wanted to swallow his saliva. Therefore, Master Meng tragically swallowed the snow pheasant's head. It got stuck in his throat. He couldn't swallow it. He couldn't spit it out. A gurgling sound came from his throat. Tan Tan felt that the hunger in his stomach had weakened a little. He was about to take another piece to eat when he suddenly heard the sound of a hen laying eggs. He turned his head in amazement and saw that Meng Chao Ran was looking at him with his mouth wide open. There was a complete pheasant's head in his mouth. Chapter 540. Tan Tan was shocked. His eyes bulged out of their sockets. Master, you don't need to stuff the chicken's head in your throat even if you want to learn how to lay eggs like a hen. I want to learn how to lay eggs like a hen. Meng Chao Ran fumed with anger. He put his hand into his mouth and took out the snow chicken's head. Then he threw it away with a whooshing sound. Then he grabbed Tan Tan's collar. You, why are you randomly eating things? Randomly eating things? Tan Tan was stunned. I didn't randomly eat things. Then what did you eat just now? Meng Chao Ran got angry. He grabbed the package and shook it fiercely. How can you randomly eat things like this? Can kill people. This thing? Tan Tan looked at the package full of spirit beast cores in horror. His face was full of disbelief. I ate these things just now? Meng Chao Ran was stunned. Could it be that I didn't know that Tan Tan had eaten these spirit beast cores? What's going on? How can I eat these? Tan Tan jumped up. His face was full of horror. He grabbed his hair and shouted while jumping up and down, How can I eat these? What will I do if I explode? Meng Chao Ran was dumbfounded as he looked at his younger brother. He felt as if he had collapsed and then reorganized himself. After a long time, he weakly said, You don't know? I don't know. Tan Tan anxiously replied. He was indescribably frightened. I wouldn't have eaten it if I knew, even if I was beaten to death. Then, do you feel anything unusual by circulating your qi? Meng Chao Ran cautiously asked. Tan Tan doesn't look like he's lying. What's going on? I heard that some injuries can't be felt. But one can't be saved if they can feel it. Tan Tan fell down on the ground with a puff sound. Then he hastily circulated his qi. He opened his eyes after a long time. I don't feel anything. You don't feel anything? Black lines appeared on Meng Chao Ran's forehead. You don't feel anything? Tan Tan felt it for a while. Then he bitterly said, I feel it. What do you feel? Meng Chao Ran hastily asked. Master, I'm hungry. Tan Tan's face turned sullen. Meng Chao Ran. Then, Tan Tan's stomach rumbled with hunger. He held the roast chicken in his hands and looked extremely distressed. He took a bite, but it was as if he was chewing on poison. He rolled it around in his mouth, but he just couldn't swallow it. After a long time, he spat out the snow chicken meat that he had chewed into minced meat. He sighed painfully. Master, I'm starving, but I just can't swallow it. Meng Chao Ran sighed. What should he do? This guy doesn't eat human food. Tan Tan sighed and groaned. He then rubbed his belly in pain. Then he unconsciously looked at the package that was filled with the inner cores of spirit beasts from the corner of his eyes. Then, a shiny thing drooped down from the corner of his mouth with a swoosh sound. "You're not allowed to eat." Meng Chao Ran roared. "I'm not eating. Master, don't worry, I won't eat it." Tan Tan shook his head, and the flesh on his cheeks trembled. He then solemnly said, "I won't eat it even if I starve to death." Meng Chao Ran experimented several times. He meticulously cooked and roasted meat for Tan Tan. In fact, he even made a bowl of fragrant meat soup for his younger brother since the conditions were extremely limited. Master Meng had done his best. But Tan and Meng Chao Ran was so worried that his heart was tangled. Tan Tan couldn't eat anything at the moment. It didn't matter if it was rice or any meat or blood food. He couldn't swallow anything. The only thing he was interested in was the inner cores of spirit beasts. Moreover, he longed for them. Meng Chao Ran tossed and turned for the entire morning, and then tossed and turned for the entire afternoon. He tossed and turned until his stomach rumbled with hunger. He ate 2 more meals. But Tan Tan was still the same. His bones were rumbling with hunger, and his eyes were glowing with hunger. But he couldn't eat anything. He was so hungry that his entire body was powerless. But he still couldn't eat? This was a big problem. Meng Chao Ran's brows tightly knitted. Tan Tan was holding his hungry belly and moaning incessantly. Neither of them had noticed that Tan Tan's eyebrows had suddenly turned pale golden. That strange mark between his eyebrows and the mark on his mouth were faintly and quietly flashing. So, they couldn't detect it. Meng Chao Ran was at his wits' end in the evening. So, he had no choice but to arrange for Tan Tan to lie down in the cave. Then he went out to practice martial arts in the snow as usual. And he also conveniently used the ice-cold snowflakes to clear his mind. Tan Tan hadn't eaten for a day. So, he wouldn't suffer from hunger. In fact, he wouldn't starve to death even if he didn't eat for 10 days. But the inner cores of spirit beasts would cause his entire body to explode if he didn't eat them properly. Meng Chao Ran would rather let his disciple starve than let him eat those terrifying things. Tan Tan was holding his stomach in pain in the cave. His eyes were glowing with a green light. "I'm starving to death. I'm really starving to death." His stomach rumbled and Tan Tan howled in grief. "I can't bear it." He couldn't help but look at that package. The more he looked, the hungrier he became. And the hungrier he became, and the more he looked, the more his stomach rumbled. Meng Chao Ran was outside when he heard this rumbling sound coming from Tan Tan's stomach. So, he roared, "You're not allowed to eat." Tan Tan's entire body trembled. He saw that his hand had extended to the package. So, he withdrew his hand as if he had received an electric shock. Then he muttered, "I won't eat. I won't eat. I won't eat, I won't eat, I won't eat." Tan Tan closed his eyes. He kept muttering, "I won't eat." Then he lay down on the ground and began to sleep. He kicked the package to one side before he slept. And he kicked it far away. He gradually fell asleep in a daze. Meng Chao Ran couldn't practice martial arts anymore. He thought for a long time. But he was still at a loss. A long time passed. Then he sighed and returned to the cave. And he saw that his beloved disciple was sleeping soundly. He was hugging that package? Moreover, it had been unlocked? Meng Chao Ran's complexion changed. He took the package from Tan Tan's bosom and looked at it. Then he counted and found that 3 more inner cores of spirit beasts were missing. It was obvious that the missing ones were 4th or 5th grade. Tan Tan. Meng Chao Ran roared. Tan Tan woke up from his dream with a start. He turned over and sat up. His eyes were still drowsy. "Master, what's wrong?" "What?" Meng Chao Ran fiercely looked at him. "Bastard. Why did you eat it secretly?" "I didn't. I really didn't eat it secretly." Tan Tan cried out in grievance. His eyes were glistening with tears. "Master, you have to believe me. I really didn't eat it. Master, you have to believe in my moral character." He suddenly patted his belly in astonishment. Then he giggled foolishly. Then he said somewhat uncertainly, "You're not hungry anymore? Why aren't you hungry anymore?" Meng Chao Ran's face turned blue with anger. You still have moral character? Tell me yourself. You didn't eat anything. So, why aren't you hungry anymore? That's right. I didn't eat anything. So, why am I not hungry anymore? Tan Tan stroked his belly in bewilderment. His eyes were full of contemplation as he muttered, This matter is extremely strange. Sigh. Meng Chao Ran sighed sadly. Then he exploded and grabbed the package. You didn't eat it? You counted. There are 3 inner cores missing. Where did they go? Did they go into a dog's belly? Tan Tan's face turned pale. He said in alarm, I didn't eat it. I didn't. He counted and his face turned green. Then he suddenly burst into tears. Master, I don't want to live anymore. I was sleeping. But I still ate it secretly. Tan Tan's eyes suddenly opened wide. Could it be that this thing melted? Meng Chao Ran wrinkled his brows and closed his eyes. He extended his hand and held Tan Tan's wrist. Then he circulated his martial power to examine it. However, Meng Chao Ran felt as if he had been bitten by a poisonous snake as soon as he poured his spiritual power into it. He opened his eyes wide and looked at Tan Tan. It was as if he had seen a ghost. My spiritual power suddenly collapsed like a tide the moment it came in contact with Tan Tan's spiritual power. It felt as if there was a super abyss there. And it had an endless suction force. I'm afraid that my cultivation would have been completely absorbed by Tan Tan if I hadn't pulled it back in time. Tan Tan was at a loss. He asked, Master, what's wrong? Meng Chao Ran looked at Tan Tan's innocent expression. He almost collapsed. How can this be? Tan Tan, you go out now. Circulate your spiritual power with all your strength. I'll see if there's any abnormality. Meng Chao Ran used the most stupid method. Tan Tan scratched his head suspiciously. Then he dragged his shoes and walked out. He then stood in the snowy ground. Then he shouted, Hey, and got into a fighting stance. Meng Chao Ran attentively watched Tan Tan practice martial power. His face was solemn. But then he suddenly opened his mouth wide. He opened it with such force that his jaw almost got dislocated. Meng Chao Ran rubbed his eyes with all his strength. Then his eyelids rolled back, and he almost fainted. A crown slowly rose on Tan Tan's head. It rose 30 feet with a schwa sound. Then Tan Tan's aura erupted, and it suddenly rose to a height of 30 feet. 2nd grade king level expert. Meng Chao Ran felt dizzy. Wasn't Tan Tan a revered martial artist a few days ago? How can he be a 2nd grade king level expert now? Then Tan Tan was shocked again. He roared like a wild beast. The qi in his dantian fiercely erupted. It carried the aura of a single-horned dragon. Then it disappeared without a trace and changed into Tan Tan's own peaceful aura. The crown on his head suddenly expanded by 3 times. It suddenly rose to a height of over 1,000 feet. It looked like a brilliant moon rising in the sky. It illuminated the surroundings with a golden light. The white snow fluttering in the air was suddenly dyed with a layer of golden color. Gotcha! Meng Chao Ran's opened mouth suddenly closed. Then he let out a strange cry. He fiercely bit his tongue. Then his eyes rolled back and he fainted. He only had one last thought before he fainted. This is impossible. This is absolutely impossible. It's a miracle that a revered martial artist can directly ascend to a 2nd grade king level expert. But it's still possible. I had done the same thing a few days ago. So, I can accept this. But, who has ever seen a revered martial artist ascend to a 2nd grade king level expert from a mere howl? King level expert. Chapter 541. Moreover, Tan Tan's king-level crown is clearly bigger than an ordinary one. Meng Chao Ran collapsed. He didn't even notice that there was a radiant sun in the middle of Tan Tan's crown. There was a crescent moon on the left side of the sun, and a star on the right side. It looked similar to the crown of an ordinary king-level expert. But it was completely different. This was the shape of a real crown. If the crown of an ordinary king-level expert was said to be that of a prince, then Tan Tan's crown was that of an emperor. and the corner of that star's radiance was faintly similar to the incomplete mark on Tan Tan's forehead. But, Master, are you all right? Tan Tan anxiously rushed over when he saw that Meng Chao Ran had fainted. However, Meng Chao Ran had been worried about Chu Yang and Tan Tan for the past few days. So, he had been mentally and physically exhausted. These two disciples were like the flesh and blood of his heart. Meng Chao Ran couldn't bear it if either of them had met with an accident. However, one of them had gone out and hadn't returned. And the other one had repeatedly contracted a strange illness. Moreover, he had received such a serious shock. His spirit couldn't bear it anymore. Meng Chao Ran finally woke up when Tan Tan called him. He propped himself up and made Tan Tan perform again after he woke up. Tan Tan's performance made Meng Chao Ran's eyes roll back. He almost fainted again. Sure enough, it was a king-level expert. Meng Chao Ran's eyes were lifeless. He weakly waved his hand. You go out first. Let me be alone here. I'm going crazy. This matter was simply too bizarre. Perhaps Chu Yang wouldn't know what had happened to Tan Tan even if he were standing here. Tan Tan stood there at a loss. He scratched his head. He wanted to laugh, but he felt embarrassed. So he couldn't laugh. He wanted to say something, but he felt that it wouldn't be appropriate to say anything. So, he scratched his head again. He scratched his back while he was at it. Master Meng sadly lowered his head. I don't have anything to be proud of in my life. I only have a proud heart. I have tempered my willpower to look down upon the heavens. I dare to boast that I won't even frown if someone were to cut me 1,000 times while I'm fully conscious. But this pride was smashed into pieces by you two brats in just a few days. Today he is shocked, tomorrow he is shocked, and sometimes he is shocked several times a day. What is this called? He waved his hand dejectedly. Get up, get up. Let me calm down. Tan Tan blinked his eyes and scratched his head. He was still worried. So he stammered for a while. Then he slowly said, Master, I'll go out now, go. Meng Chao Ran turned his face away and waved his hand. Master, I'm going out now. Tan Tan took 2 steps and then turned around. Go. Master, then I'm really going out. Tan Tan took 3 steps and then turned around. Go. Master, I'm really going out. His last cry turned into a scream. Meng Chao Ran kicked him fiercely, and he flew out like a cannonball fired from a cannon. Meng Chao Ran's roar came from behind. Get lost. Don't you think you're fucking annoying enough? Tan Tan flew out like a cannonball. Bang. The sound of collision broke an icicle prism. White snow flew in the air, and flew over half of the mountaintop with a schwa sound. Then he crashed into a big tree with a puff sound. Large chunks of white snow fell from the tree, and buried Tan Tan in a flash. Cough, cough, cough. Tan Tan coughed. He crawled out of the pile of snow while coughing. He wanted to cry, but had no tears. What is this? I'm a filial disciple. I want to be concerned about my master. But I got hit like this? I can't live past this day, he sobbed twice. Then he said in an aggrieved manner, I'm too handsome and confident. I'm afraid that I'll fail to live up to heaven's good intentions. Otherwise, I'll commit suicide in front of you. He stood up as he spoke. But he suddenly felt hungry. He scratched his head and thought, Master can't see me now. And he won't let me go back for a while. So, I might as well go hunt a few spirit beasts and eat their inner cores. Tan Tan sneakily climbed over the mountaintop behind him, and started to look for spirit beasts in all directions. He walked for a while. Then he suddenly felt that something was wrong. He raised his head to look. He only saw the sound of wind whistling in the air. 3 shadows were drifting towards him from 3 directions, like ghosts. It could be seen that these 3 people were in a hurry. In fact, they were using their full strength to hasten their journey. Tan Tan's scalp went numb. He screamed in his heart. He felt infinitely miserable. Didn't I come out for a while? How did I run into these 3 powerful monsters? Look at these 3 monsters. I can't beat them. Tan Tan turned around and started to run. However, the sound was heard. A red-clothed man was standing in front of him. His eyes were red. He was nervously looking at Tan Tan Tan. His gaze was extremely fervent. Tan Tan didn't raise his head. He turned around and rushed in another direction. However, a white-clothed man stood in front of him. He turned around again. Then another shwa sound was heard. A silver-clothed man blocked his way. The three of them formed a triangle and blocked Tan Tan's every escape route. Their eyes were burning as they looked at Tan Tan. Tan Tan's heart suddenly turned ice cold. He couldn't help but curse. A good dog doesn't block the way. Why are you three standing here like corpses? He wasn't a match for these people. And these people were blocking his way. So, they must be enemies. There was no hope in facing such powerful enemies. Therefore, Tan Tan decided that he would try to curse one of them to death before he died. As for informing his master, Tan Tan didn't even think about it. In fact, Tan Tan wouldn't do it even if he could do it. In fact, he would never do it even if he could. These three people were unfathomable. Even his master wouldn't be a match for them. It's fine if I die. Why should I implicate him? Master still has Chu Yang if I die. So, he probably won't be too sad. But, Chu Yang will be lonely if Master and I die. So, he will be alone. However, Tan Tan hadn't expected that his unpleasant curse wouldn't provoke a frenzied attack like he had expected. Instead, those three people were somewhat surprised and took a step back. Their eyes sized up Tan Tan at the same time. Their eyes were filled with excitement and doubt. Tan Tan was startled. Could it be that these three people don't have any evil intentions? He probed. Get out of the way. Let me pass. But no one moved. Tan Tan blinked and scratched his head. Then he rushed towards one of them. Well, he brushed past him. These three people didn't have any murderous aura. Moreover, they didn't give off the feeling of mutual hostility. They should let me go, right? But he found that the white-clothed man was blocking his way again when he rushed over. Tan Tan became furious. He grabbed him and shouted, "What's the matter? Aren't you annoying?" He grabbed the lapel of that white-clothed man. Tan Tan tried to lift him up, but couldn't. He tried to fling him aside, but he couldn't. He grabbed his neck and wrestled with it. Then he used his teeth to bite. Tan Tan angrily used all his means. But that man didn't move. He just stood there like a 1,000-year-old tree. Tan Tan used all his means, but he still didn't move. Tan Tan sat on the snowy ground. He angrily said, "You won't fight. You won't kill me. You won't retreat. Why are you blocking my way? Do you have nothing better to do?" He suddenly felt aggrieved when he said the last sentence. You have nothing better to do. But I'm still regretting. Those three people were still calmly looking at him. They didn't say a word. It seemed as if they had counted every fine hair on Tan Tan's body. Tan Tan felt his blood run cold. He raised his head and looked at these three people. The red-clothed man had a radiant sun symbol on his forehead. It was only the size of a copper coin. The white-clothed man had a crescent moon symbol on his forehead in the same position. The silver-clothed man had a star symbol on his forehead in the same position. Moreover, the red-clothed man gave people the feeling that he was as hot as the sun. The white-clothed man was as cold and gentle as the moonlight. The silver-clothed man was as deep and mysterious as the starry sky. All of them were very clear. The expressions of these three people were almost the same. They were excited, doubtful, afraid, longing, worried. It was extremely complicated. What the hell do you want to do? Tan Tan angrily shouted, What do you want to do? Why don't you fart? You don't want to leave, and you don't want to leave either. Motherfucker, are you playing with art? The complexions of the three people slightly changed. They exposed a trace of excitement in their eyes. Tan Tan was very surprised. He scratched his head and suspiciously said, Do you like to be scolded? You've blocked me here just to let me scold you? Hiss hiss, he sucked in a mouthful of cold air. He faintly felt that his guess wasn't very reliable. The deadlock continued for a while. It was still silent. Then, Tan Tan finally couldn't bear it anymore. He cursed, What do you three bastards want to do? Motherfucker, shouldn't you say something if you want to do something? Motherfucker, can't you just squeak? Can't you just squeak and fart? Motherfucker, are you dead? The complexions of the three people finally changed after a round of cursing. They looked at each other and revealed a hesitant expression on their faces. It seemed that it was very difficult for them to open their mouths. They didn't know where to start. They were embarrassed and embarrassed. There was also some fear, dread, expectation, fanaticism, and a desire for a husband. All kinds of emotions appeared on the faces of the three people at this moment. It seemed as if the three people were performing a face-changing performance. However, there was no anger after being scolded. The eyes of the three people were clearly urging each other at this moment. You speak first. No, you speak first. No, you speak first. Tan Tan felt dizzy. He looked at the three people who wanted to speak, but were hesitating. It was obvious that they had thousands of words in their hearts. But they couldn't say a single word. Tan Tan suddenly felt his hair stand on end. He was so scared that he almost pissed his pants. Could it be that these three people have fallen in love with me because of my handsome appearance? Tan Tan's complexion turned ashen as this thought arose. Oh my God, you are all men. I can't accept this. Hey. Tan Tan trembled as he said, you three haven't fallen in love with me, right? The three people looked at each other, and black lines appeared on their foreheads. Chapter 542. I like women. Tan Tan's facial features wrinkled together. He almost cried as he said, really, we're not suitable for each other. I don't discriminate against this, but it won't be a problem to find another one with your strength. If it doesn't work, then the three of you can make do with each other. The three of them were dumbfounded as they looked at Tan Tan. It seemed as if they had discovered a monster. Tan Tan became even more certain. He couldn't help but howl in grief. His tears fell like rain. What do you like about me? I'll change. That won't do. No, we. It seemed that he had no choice but to explain. The red-robed man's complexion became somewhat distressed. He shook his hand and mumbled an explanation. His accent was somewhat strange. It's not you? Tan Tan immediately felt relieved. Then he thought of another possibility. He scratched his head and said, it's not you. Is it possible that your daughter has taken a fancy to me? Did you come here to find a match? So that I can go back and perform the ritual? The more he thought about it, the more likely it seemed. He couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Then he said in a fanciful manner, that, is your daughter beautiful? He suddenly felt somewhat proud. My charm is boundless. As soon as he was happy, the tattoo on his forehead suddenly glowed, and a faint golden light flashed fiercely. The bodies of the three people opposite him shook at the same time. It was a kind of feverish excitement that made blood rush to their heads. They excitedly opened their mouths at the same time. Their eyes brimmed with tears. King, have you really returned? These three people shed tears at the same time. It was a kind of extremely excited radiance. It was also a kind of fanaticism in their hearts. The three of them were flushed red, and their bodies began to tremble. Tan Tan sat down on the ground. He scratched his head like a confused monk. He asked in a daze, what? The three people rushed forward at the same time. They looked at that half mark on Tan Tan's forehead. They were indescribably excited. One of them even choked with sobs. Tan Tan became even more alarmed when he saw that they were looking at his forehead and shedding tears. He hastily covered his forehead with his hand and drew back in alarm. What are you doing? What are you doing? You're hungry, but my head doesn't have much meat. He jumped up excitedly. He saw that the three people were getting closer and closer. So he suddenly shouted. He mobilized his spiritual power and said, don't come up. I won't be polite if you come up again. The three of them acted as if they hadn't heard him, and their expressions were still the same. Tan Tan let out a sound as he punched. The sound of wind and thunder resounded along with this punch. And a crown suddenly appeared in the sky. The fist landed solidly on the red-robed man's chest, but the red-robed man didn't seem to feel it. His body didn't even move. Just like the other two, he raised his head and looked at the crown in the sky. Hot tears flowed down his face. The red sun was in the center, the crescent moon on the left, and the stars on the right. The three of them stared at the crown in a daze, as if the crown was a treasure that was hard to come by in tens of thousands of years, or an extremely captivating sight. They were so infatuated, so entranced that the three pairs of eyes simultaneously shone with the light of a pilgrimage. "My king!" The three of them cried out at the same time, their voices choked with sobs. Tan became nervous. He looked at this and that in a perplexed manner. He then said, "Have you mistaken me for someone else? I am not your king." He suddenly felt a burst of grievance as he spoke till here. So, he sadly said, "I haven't even been the prime minister in my lifetime." The red-robed man wiped his eyes and firmly said, "Everything in the world can be mistaken. But we can never mistake you, my king." The other two nodded heavily. Tan was at a loss. He hadn't thought that he would come out in such an inexplicable manner. And he would meet these three people in such an inexplicable manner. Moreover, they would regard him as their king. This strange encounter had left Tan's small head unable to react. "Then, what benefits would I get if I were your king?" Tan rolled his eyes, and decided to take advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to swindle them. A king can rule over the world. A king can take whatever he wants from the upper and lower heavens. Anyone who dares to resist will be slaughtered. Even chickens and dogs won't be spared. The white-robed man solemnly said. Tan jumped in fright. He probingly asked, "Then, are there any beauties?" "The beauties of the world are at the king's disposal. He can take whatever he wants." The silver-robed man's expression was solemn. Tan felt more and more unreal. "I haven't met these three crazy people, right? It seems that they are seriously ill. Forget it. I don't want to play with you. I want to go back." Tan was dispirited. "King, the human world is very dangerous. This race is extremely treacherous. It would be better to return to our race and slowly awaken." The red-robed man took a step forward and anxiously said, "You mean, I'm not a human?" Tan raised his eyes. "Yes, King, you're—" The red-robed man hadn't finished speaking when he was interrupted by Tan's shout, "Nonsense! You're not a human." How many cold eyes had Tan received over the years? He didn't know how many times he had been scolded because of his appearance. And this was what he hated the most, others scolding him that he wasn't a human. He immediately exploded when he heard this. The red-robed man looked at each other in amazement. He then murmured, "King is right. We're not human, Tan had a headache and rubbed his temples. He simply turned around and walked away. "Don't follow me. I will kill myself if you follow me." Tan's brain worked exceptionally fast. "They regard me as a king. They must be very nervous if I kill myself." Sure enough, the complexion of the three people changed as soon as they heard this. They hastily got out of the way with a schwa sound. Tan's eyes lit up. This suicide is very useful. He walked out calmly. Those three people didn't dare to stop him. But they blindly followed behind him. Tan turned around and chased them away several times. But those three people didn't leave. Tan got angry, and his stomach became even hungrier. His mouth gurgled for a while. "King, you're hungry," the white-robed man said politely. "Shut your fucking mouth." Tan had already found the feeling of being a king. He glared at him and said, "Do you think your stomach will growl like this when you're tired? You know that I'm hungry. But you still haven't brought me anything to eat. You only know how to spew these non-nutritious farts." The white-robed man's complexion turned ashen. He repeatedly said, "Yes, yes." Then he turned around and flew away. He hadn't gone far when he suddenly let out a long howl. This howl was strange. It sounded like the howl of a wild beast. Suddenly, a shwa sound was heard after a short while. Silver rays of light rushed over from all directions. And the silver waves surged for a while. There were still many more coming from afar. Tan's legs went soft, and his eyes bulged out of their sockets. Fuck. There are so many wolves. There are so many howling moonsilver wolves. This bastard. What are you howling for? I'm done for. It looks like this fresh-baked king is about to turn into a piece of meat in the belly of a wolf. And he will turn into a pile of shit. Tantan's legs and stomach cramped. He saw that the howling moonsilver wolves were rolling up like waves. And their numbers kept increasing. In fact, there were more than 10,000 of them in a short time. These howling moonsilver wolves were 5th-grade spirit beasts. 2 howling moonsilver wolves could contend against a king-level expert. 10,000 of them? What kind of concept was that? Tantan didn't dare to imagine. That white-robed man shouted. And all the howling moonsilver wolves prostrated themselves on the ground in an orderly manner. Tantan was left dumbstruck when the white-robed man's figure moved and started a massacre. A moonlight sword appeared in his hand. Shwa shwa shwa, and blood flowed out. His figure turned into a white light and slaughtered 400 to 500 howling moonsilver wolves. Then he took out the inner cores from their heads. However, these 10,000 howling moonsilver wolves only prostrated themselves in fear. They issued deep and muffled woo sounds from their throats. They didn't dare to move. They allowed themselves to be slaughtered. It seemed as if these 10,000 wolves had come here to throw away their lives. The white-robed man counted the number of inner cores after a while. Then he let out a low whistle, and the wolf pack dispersed like a tide. Only incomplete wolf corpses were left on the ground. The white-robed man cut off a piece of his clothes and made it into a package. Then he put the inner cores inside it. Then he arrived in front of Tantan and said, "King, these are the inner cores of 500 howling moonsilver wolves. They should be enough for a short time." He was somewhat nervous. So he hurriedly explained, "King hasn't awakened yet. So it seems that we can't use the higher level ones. So we used the 5th level ones. I hope King won't take offense." Tantan opened his eyes wide. He unconsciously took the package and looked at the white-robed man as if he was looking at an immortal. Then he suddenly screamed and turned around to run away. "You scared this handsome man to death. This bastard has such a terrifying ability," and ordered him around. Fuck. Tantan wiped his cold sweat as he madly ran away. He disappeared without a trace in an instant. The 3 people didn't chase after him this time. They just stood there and looked at Tantan's disappearing figure. He has just begun to awaken. He can't accept us yet. The red-robed man said, "We know about King's existence. So, we shouldn't disturb him for the time being. We shouldn't invite a disaster for him." The white-robed man nodded and said, "Yes." The silver-robed man muttered, "Should we send a few experts to protect King in secret?" "We mustn't." The 2 men stopped him together. King's path has always been the beginning of killing. Only continuous adversity can make King awaken as soon as possible. I'm afraid we'll spoil everything if we intervene. We won't be able to offset our sins even if we die 10,000 times if we delay King's awakening. The silver-robed man suddenly broke out in cold sweat. "Let's go back and inform the elders of the upper 3 heavens about this good news. I believe that they'll be very excited once they get this news." The red-robed man said, "Yes, let's go quickly." The 3 men turned around and left. The red-robed man waved his hand as they passed by the wolf's corpse. And the snow and ice in the sky suddenly rose up and buried the wolf's corpse along with the bloodstains. The surface of the ground became tranquil once again. There wasn't a single ripple. The figures of the 3 men slowly disappeared in the wind and snow. Only a few words were faintly heard. "It's been 10,000 years. King has finally. I must pay my respects when I go back. Boo-hoo. I didn't expect that King's crown would suddenly appear in this northern wilderness. I was right to come this time. Boo-hoo." The wind seemed to be weeping and complaining. Chapter 543. Tantan rushed back in a panic. He was panic-stricken like a stray dog. He was like a fish that had escaped the net. He saw that he was about to return to the cave. Then he regained his senses. He turned his head to look behind him. Those 3 people didn't chase after him. So, he groaned and sat down on the ground. He then started to pant. I was scared to death. That white-clothed man was so terrifying. The powerful silver wolves didn't dare to fight back. Tan Tan wiped his cold sweat with lingering fear. He thought for a long time. I can only barely describe the strength of that white-clothed man with the word terrifying. Motherfucker. Fortunately, those 3 people are crazy. They thought that I was their king. Otherwise, I would have been miserable. He felt something heavy in his bosom. He looked at it and realized that he had brought back the entire package of silver wolf cores. He didn't even know when he had taken the lead. Crap. I'm rich. Tan Tan shouted in excitement. Then he covered his mouth. He sneakily poked his head out and looked around. He made sure that those 3 people didn't chase after him. Then he held the package in his bosom with a satisfied look on his face. Tan Tan didn't care about the fact that those 3 people had called him king. I'm a normal person. Wouldn't it be an insult to my wise and divine IQ if I believed the words of these crazy people? I don't even know who my parents are. So, how would I know who their king is? This is nonsense. He took out a howling moon silver wolf core and threw it into his mouth. He immediately felt comfortable all over his body. It seemed as if every hair on his body was dancing in excitement. This kind of feeling was simply the greatest enjoyment in life. Young Master Tan moaned for a while. Oh, oh, oh. Then he opened the package and ate 3 cores in a row. He suddenly felt full. He sighed in satisfaction. Then he couldn't help but burst into tears. I can finally eat my fill, he then thought for a while. Then he opened the package and divided the 500 silver wolf cores into 3 small packages. He put one in his bosom, one in his robe, and one on his back. He also caught 2 snow chickens and put them on top of the package. I can't help it. Master, I didn't deliberately deceive you. Tan Tan sighed in grief. It's just that you won't let me eat it. After concealing himself, Zhang Xian stood up and jumped a little. After confirming that there was nothing wrong with his movements, he stood up and walked back. Meng Chao Ran was in the middle of interrogating Tan Tan when Chu Yang returned. Where did you go? Meng Chao Ran asked sternly. Tan Tan rolled his eyes. I went out to admire the snow. Snow appreciation? Meng Chao Ran sneered. You know how to appreciate snow. Yes, yes. Tan Tan nodded like a chick pecking at rice. I suddenly became very excited when I saw the sudden snowfall. I wanted to compose a poem. I wanted to sing, this pure white snow, this fluttering snow, this beautiful snow, this beautiful snow, this beautiful snow, this beautiful snow. Meng Chao Ran's complexion became more and more serious. He coldly looked at Tan Tan. Oh, by the way, I also caught 2 snow chickens for Master. Look, they are fat and tender. They are both female. Tan Tan hurriedly took out 2 snow chickens and presented them in front of Meng Chao Ran as if he was presenting a treasure. He then said in a flattering manner, Master, you will certainly be greatly nourished if you eat them. Smack. Meng Chao Ran hit the 2 snow chickens to one side. He nodded and said, What's that? He looked at the package on Tan Tan's shoulder. I caught the inner cores of spirit beasts. Tan Tan forced a smile. He hurriedly took them down and carefully placed them on the ground. I only caught this much. This is really all. Take again. There's more. Meng Chao Ran remained unmoved. This is really all. The more Tan Tan spoke, the more powerless he became. Eventually, he was defeated by Meng Chao Ran's gaze. Another small package escaped from his bosom. It seemed as if he was about to cry, Master, there's really no more. I didn't hide it in my pants. Take again. There's more. Meng Chao Ran coldly shouted. There's really no more. There's nothing in my pants. Tan Tan firmly clamped his legs together. Oh! Meng Chao Ran snorted in a low and deep voice. Are you going to take it or not? I'm going to take it. Tan Tan dejectedly spread his legs. He lifted his robe and assumed a horse stance. He held the package with one hand and then untied it from his waist. He then placed it on the ground. "There's really no more this time," Tan Tan said in a relaxed manner. "Well, I also believe that there's no more this time." Meng Ran nodded. "Master, how do you know?" Tan Tan was very surprised. "I'm a crafty rabbit with 3 burrows. My stratagem is very superb." Meng Ran couldn't help but want to laugh. But he forcibly restrained himself. Then he shouted, "Good Tan Tan. You can do it now, you've learned how to lie. See if I don't teach you a lesson." "Master, please spare my life." Tan Tan broke into a run. But he bumped into Chu Yang, who was rushing in with his body covered in wind and snow. Minister Chu was caught off guard. He felt as if he had been hit by a train. He flew out with a bang sound. And he fell on the snow-covered ground in a sorry state. Tan Tan also flew out and bumped into Meng Ran's body. Then, Meng Ran caught him on the spot and gave him a fierce beating. He was beaten until he howled in grief again and again. And tears and snot flowed down his face. Chu Yang had never dreamt that he would get hit by a crazy bear as soon as he entered the cave. He had excitedly returned to the place where his master and junior brother were. He had even heard the two of them talking from afar. Wouldn't he have been knocked to pieces if his cultivation hadn't been good enough? Then Meng Ran asked him, "You still know how to come back?" Minister Chu was instantly dumbfounded. Meng Ran finally felt relieved after a long time. He looked at his 2 younger brothers who had lowered their heads and drooped their faces. He couldn't help but reveal a trace of a smile at the corners of his eyes. He then snorted. Then he told Chu Yang about what had happened after he had left. Eating the inner cores of spirit beasts? Low-grade king-level expert? Chu Yang opened his mouth wide in astonishment. He turned his head and looked at Tan Tan. Tan Tan's swollen face quickly exposed a smile that was uglier than crying. Chu Yang was puzzled. How did Tan Tan advance so quickly? "I'm the Tribulation Sword Master, and I'm only a 5th-grade king-level expert. Tan Tan's foundation wasn't as good as mine. He was inferior to me in every aspect. But he has suddenly surpassed me by so much? This doesn't conform to common sense." Chu Yang hastily asked the sword spirit. But the sword spirit also looked at each other in confusion. Then, "Do you want to eat anything other than the inner cores of spirit beasts when you're hungry?" Chu Yang asked. "I don't want to eat, and I can't eat." Tan Tan swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said pitifully, "What about after eating the inner cores of spirit beasts?" "I can't eat any more. My stomach will be full. Would you be able to eat it if I were you?" Tan Tan rolled his eyes. Meng Ran and Chu Yang looked at each other in dismay. They both felt that this matter was too outrageous. "But I think that there shouldn't be a problem." Chu Yang cautiously said, "The inner cores of spirit beasts have always been used to enhance spiritual power. Tan Tan eating them like this doesn't seem to be a big deal. The problem lies in the fact that he can even digest the inner cores of spirit beasts when he eats the first one. So, he won't be able to digest these low-level ones." Chu Yang concluded, "Moreover, he can't eat anything other than this. So, let him eat it. Moreover, his strength can increase so quickly after eating it, it's a good thing." "Good thing?" Meng Ran snorted and said, "Where can I get so many inner cores of spirit beasts for him to eat? How about you feed him?" Meng Ran's eyes lit up when he said this. Is Tan Tan that kind of person? Well, this matter isn't impossible. Chu Yang felt that his financial resources were robust. So, it didn't seem to be a big deal to feed such a junior martial brother. "Tan Tan, how many can you eat in one meal?" Chu Yang rubbed his head. He then turned his head and asked Tan Tan. 3 5th-grade ones." Tan Tan sighed. "1 a day is enough." 1 5th-grade spirit beast inner core a day. 1 5th-grade spirit beast inner core costs 200,000 taels of silver. Chu Yang hissed, "You eat 1,800,000 taels of silver in 1 day?" Tan Tan scratched his head and smiled foolishly. "Who the fuck can afford to feed you?" Minister Chu stood up. 1,800,000 taels of silver in 1 day? 18 million taels of silver in 10 days, 54 million taels of silver in 1 month, 48 million taels of silver in 1 year. Is that enough for you alone? Chu Yang shouted, this isn't counting. What if you eat 7th grade or 8th grade spirit beasts in case you level up? Chu Yang was speechless. What if eating 5th grade spirit beasts doesn't have any effect? And eating 7th grade spirit beasts would cost 1 million taels of silver. So, he would eat more than 4 billion taels of silver in 1 year. As for 7th grade spirit beasts, their price would be sky high. 1 spirit beast core would cost 10 million taels of silver. So, it would cost more than 40 billion taels of silver a year. 8th grade spirit beasts were priceless. 9th grade spirit beasts, Chu Yang felt dizzy. He was on the verge of collapse. So, if this guy were to eat them for 20 or 30 years, would he be worth 100 billion taels of silver? Would 1 trillion taels of silver be enough? I can't afford to feed him. I can't afford to feed him anyway. Master, how did you accept such a super prodigal disciple? Chu Yang shook his head again and again. He hurriedly pushed away this hot potato. Master, let Tan Tan follow you. Let him receive more instruction. It's also a good thing. Meng Chao Ran snorted. He felt helpless in his heart. You have the nerve to talk about Tan Tan? Which of my 2 disciples isn't super prodigal? The sword spirit was in a good mood that night. So, he concocted a complete version of the heavy pill. Chu Yang made Meng Chao Ran take it. The effect was very remarkable. Meng Chao Ran's injuries caused by the melting meridian's hand healed almost instantaneously. Moreover, his meridians expanded, and his cultivation soared from 1st grade emperor level to 2nd grade emperor level. As for his state of mind and heavenly law comprehension, they directly rushed to the monarch level. Meng Chao Ran was pleasantly surprised. He pulled his 2 disciples to chat that night. Chu Yang even took out wine to celebrate his master's achievement. Meng Chao Ran got drunk to his heart's content. He held his 2 disciples' hands and chatted for the whole night. Chu Yang woke up the next morning. He felt that something was wrong. He looked beside him and saw that Tan Tan was snoring on his back. He would occasionally grind his teeth and would make people's teeth ache. Sometimes he would even whistle in a rhythmic manner. Occasionally he would turn over and fart with a bang. Chu Yang covered his nose and got up. He then walked out of the cave with a sigh. He grabbed a few handfuls of snow and washed his face. He then rinsed his mouth. He immediately became sober. Chu Yang was very happy to see his master so happy after he had healed his master's injuries. He had drunk wine with his master last night. So he couldn't fake it. Minister Chu had indeed let down his guard and had gotten drunk. Chapter 544. There was a poem written on the mountain wall at the entrance of the cave. It was written in a flamboyant style. But it also revealed a very calm and carefree feeling. It was Meng Chao Ran's handwriting. Morning dew and morning are in a hurry, heaven and earth are hard to meet, cutting off the night of the heavens, embracing life and death. Meng Chao Ran had written the following words to Chu Yang. Chu Yang, you are a steady person. You can think through everything thoroughly. I am very relieved to hand Tan Tan over to you. Take good care of your junior martial brother. You must live no matter what. I have taken care of you for so many years. You have finally grown up. I also want to go out and relax. I want to go on a scenic tour. You are not ordinary people. You are destined to live an extraordinary life. So, you can't stay under my protection for a long time. A young eagle must fall from a 10,000 feet cliff if it wants to soar into the sky. A stubborn stone must undergo thousands of torments if it wants to transform into a fine jade. I am waiting for you to shine. I am waiting for the news that your names will shake the heavens. I will get drunk with a smile on my face no matter where I am at that time. A man always has a lot of things to do in his life. He always has a lot of responsibilities to bear. He can't let go of life or death. Moreover, he has to face it alone. He can't regret even if the road ahead is a dead end. Don't look for me when I go. Meng Chao Ran's message was just like him. He was indifferent and carefree. He didn't bite on his words. He was speaking in plain words. Even Tan Tan could understand it clearly if he saw it. Chu Yang was startled in front of the stone wall. Suddenly, a burst of deep frustration welled up in his heart. Master has left. Master has really left this time. Tan Tan had been holding him back the last time. So, Meng Chao Ran couldn't leave. But he was very relieved to see his two disciples this time. Chu Yang was looking after Tan Tan. So, Meng Chao Ran was even more relieved. Therefore he left. He wanted to do what he had always wanted to do. But he couldn't do it. Master, you can't. Chu Yang rushed out. He looked anxious. Tendon, I can't afford to raise him. The empty mountain was silent. There was no reply. Chu Yang naturally knew what Meng Chao Ran was going to do. He was going to look for Yi Chuchen. Perhaps he was going to look for his dream. However, even though Meng Chao Ran was now an emperor-level expert, he was still incomparably weak compared to the Yi clan. How could he do that? If he really went, wouldn't that be the same as sending himself to his death? Chu Yang shouted as he thought of countless reasons. Meng Chao Ran never replied. In other words, he had already left this place and walked very far away. After a long time, Chu Yang dejectedly sat down in the heavy snow. He murmured, Master, you must take care. He fiercely punched the ground, causing the surrounding snowy ground to tremble. He gnashed his teeth and said, If you're hurt in any way, I'll raze the Yi clan to the ground. Not even a chicken or dog will be spared. Meng Chao Ran's message seemed calm, but it was actually very resolute. It made it clear that he wanted to deal with this matter alone and wouldn't allow anyone else to interfere. Chu Yang respected his teacher and wouldn't interfere, but he couldn't help but worry. Tan Tan was awakened by Meng Chao Ran's cry. He rushed out of the cave and saw the handwriting that Meng Chao Ran had left behind. He stood there in a daze for a long while. Then he suddenly burst into tears in the distance. It was snowing heavily. Meng Chao Ran's entire body had been dyed white by the heavy snow. His eyes were the same color as the sky and the earth. He quietly stood on top of the mountain. He heard Chu Yang's shouts and Tan Tan's cries faintly. Meng Chao Ran faintly smiled. Tears were faintly flickering in the corners of his eyes. My disciples, you must take care of yourselves. You must live. Meng Chao Ran silently said in his heart, As I've said in my message, a man has many responsibilities in his life that he must bear. There are many things that must be done. His eyes became deep and full of longing. He slowly raised his head and looked at the distant horizon. That direction was the entrance to the upper three heavens. Choo-choo, I'm coming, Meng Chao Ran said in a low voice. He felt his heart trembling slightly as he murmured, Are you okay? He took one last deep look at the cave and murmured, You too. Although I didn't ask, you are my disciples. How can I not understand you? Chu Yang is the master of Calamity Sword in this life, and Tan Tan is a member of the Divine Clan. Everyone has their own experiences. I'll not only be a burden to you but also a hindrance if I continue to follow you as your master. I didn't expect that I, Meng Chao Ran, would have 3 disciples in my life. The eldest one is a traitor, the second one is the master of Calamity Sword, and the third one is a member of the Divine Clan. None of them are ordinary people. My luck is really good. Meng Chao Ran laughed at himself. What more can a man ask for in his life to have 2 disciples like this? Meng Chao Ran resolutely turned around and strode forward. His sleeves fluttered, and his figure fluttered. He looked lonely and carefree, lonely and aloof. He slowly disappeared in the wind and snow. The heavy snow slowly covered his footsteps. He didn't turn around. This master didn't say anything, but he saw everything clearly. He spent half of his life raising his 2 younger brothers. But he chose to leave when they grew up. It seemed that he didn't want to be responsible anymore. But his departure was the deepest responsibility. You have to walk your own path. You have your own path. I also have mine. Meng Chao Ran left. Master has left. Tan Tan was disappointed and frustrated. It was as if he had suddenly lost his support. It was as if he had left his parents. He felt as if his flesh and blood were being torn apart. You still have me by your side. Tan Tan, you have to pull yourself together. Don't disappoint your master, Chu Yang comforted. Tan Tan's confused eyes turned back, and he looked at Chu Yang's face. Then he suddenly burst into laughter and somersaulted. Yes, master didn't let me look in the mirror. He didn't let me be shocked. He didn't let me praise myself. He didn't let me compare myself with others. He even didn't let me talk sometimes. But it's great now. Chu Yang, tell me, am I handsome or not? Handsome. Handsome like dog shit. Chu Yang had black lines on his forehead. He felt that comforting such a heartless guy was the biggest mistake he had ever made. Nonsense. Tan Tan was displeased. Then he suddenly thought of something and said in a shocked manner, "What about now? What about now? Am I handsome now?" Chu Yang looked at Tan Tan's excited face and weakly sighed, "Handsome. You're very handsome now." Waha. Tan Tan proudly somersaulted. Then he happily changed his posture. Am I handsome now? He took out a small mirror as he spoke. Then he looked from left to right and threw a coquettish wink at the mirror. Chu Yang wanted to cry. He deeply lowered his head and said in a dull voice, "Even more handsome." Waha, and now? He changed his posture again. Chu Yang collapsed. Meng Chao Ran would have grabbed Chu Yang's hand if he had been here. Then he would have tearfully said, "Chu Yang, you finally understand my pain now." Chu Yang and Tan Tan wandered around for the next few days. They crazily looked for spirit beasts to fight and hunted for their inner cores. They also looked for people of various big clans to rob. They were frantically consolidating their current strength. The northern wilderness was suddenly filled with a foul wind and bloody mist. That's because these two weren't the only ones. For other people were also crazily fighting. They were fighting madly in the northern wilderness. They were crazy robbers. Every one of them was wearing a mask that was almost identical. Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Now, even in a spacious and empty place like the northern wastelands, everyone had become jittery at the slightest sound. Many people had already thought of retreating. They were preparing to withdraw. Many people ran away as soon as they saw someone wearing a mask. Especially those three people. One of them was crazily howling. He was afraid that others wouldn't know that he was Wolf Sword King level expert Luo Kudi. The other one was speaking in a foreign language. He was incessantly shouting, "Dog Ant." He was afraid that others wouldn't know that he was GMO, the second son of the G clan. It was unknown what had gotten into these two people. They had joined the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. They were wearing masks, but they had revealed their identities. They would rush forward like mad dogs whenever they saw someone. They would use every means possible to rob them. Moreover, they weren't afraid of death. They were extremely valiant. This made many people who had heard about them mutter in their hearts, "This doesn't seem like it. I heard that those two were crafty. How could they be as brave and valiant as these two?" Moreover, there are 2 Sword Kings and 1 Saber King in the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. These 3 people are the most difficult to deal with, especially those 2 Sword Kings. I don't know how they would sneak attack me. The Saber King is a bit better, but he attacks people's self-esteem even more. That's because this great Saber King doesn't have any misgivings. It doesn't matter if you're in a group of 3 or 5 or even a group of dozens of people. He'll just stand in front of you with a majestic saber. Then, he'll defeat you with absolute strength. He'll crush you as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. This isn't as good as being sneak attacked. At least, I'll have a reason to comfort myself. The most speechless one is the madman. This madman's actions can't be measured with common sense. He doesn't just want to rob. He also wants to fatten you up. He'll chase you until you've killed a spirit beast. Then, he'll come out and rob you again. Then he'll sprinkle some scent on your body. Then, he'll come back to rob you again after a period of time when there's no profit to be made. He'll curse you until your ancestors jump out of their coffins if you still end up empty-handed. Anyone who has been robbed by this madman more than 3 times has left the northern wilderness in tears. Even if you kill me, you won't feel so bad. This madman also has another characteristic. If he comes across an expert by chance, and the disparity between the two sides isn't that big, then that expert will suffer a bloody misfortune. He's a king-level expert. Moreover, he's a fake. Only a first-grade or a second-grade emperor-level expert can be higher than him. As for a higher-level expert, this guy slips away faster than a rabbit. Chapter 545. Then, this crazy person would continue to fight with you. He wouldn't let you go. He would follow you if you walked. He would fight with you if you stopped. He would watch you eat. He would take something in his hand and put it in his mouth. Then he wouldn't feel hungry anymore. Then he would politely wait for you to finish eating before fighting again. He would fight until you collapsed. Or he would fight until he defeated you. There was once an emperor-level expert of a certain clan who had been pestered by this guy. He had begged for mercy and said, "I admit that you are stronger than me. I beg you to leave." The result was that this guy flew into a rage and said, "Bullshit. You beat me until I was rolling on the ground a moment ago. Then, you flatter me in the blink of an eye. How can I let you off so easily?" As a result, he chased that second-grade emperor-level expert for a week and didn't give up. That emperor-level expert had no other choice. So, he had pretended that he was no match for Tan Tan. And Tan Tan had even spat on his face in the end. That tragic emperor-level expert had endured it. What could he do if he couldn't bear to see such an unkillable monster? He had used all of his strength to hit Tan Tan's body. However, it had been like hitting a rubber ball. And it had bounced back like a rubber ball. Tan Tan was unscathed. As for his weapon, he had a heavenly weapon in his hand. If you took out your sword, he would cut it in half with a swoosh. What was there to fight? That would be suicide. It was better to obediently let him beat him up and then send him away. Tan Tan had spat on his face, but no one had seen it. So, it wasn't shameful. This second-grade emperor-level expert had run out of the northern wilderness in a straight line after he had finished his business. It was said that he had lived in seclusion from then on. The dangers of the Jianghu were known today. The most frightening thing was that there were too many abnormal people. Tan Tan had finally met his match one day. He had been having a lot of fun after he had separated from Chu Yang. Moreover, he had Chu Yang's 1,000 miles soul-chasing incense on his body. So, the two of them had met once every fortnight. So, it had been easy for them to find each other. However, he had met his match this time. He had chased an emperor-level expert for 3 or 4 days. Then, he had realized that he had gone too far away. So, he had lost his way. Tan had met a ragged teenager at this time. Tan stepped forward and fought with him. He beat him up and then asked for directions. In the end, after following the young man's instructions, he found himself back at the same place. The worst thing was that he found that the spirit beast core on him had been stolen at some point in time. Tan flew into a rage. During this period of time, Chu Yang had been secretly observing the progress of his brothers. Chu Yang was watching from the side. He only felt that his eyes were somewhat moist. His heart was also shaken. These two men would always roar every time they were caught in a desperate situation. And they would always be exhausted. "We brothers will rush to the heavens together." Then, they would jump up as if they had taken an aphrodisiac and would crazily fight. Their crazed fighting spirit would even make their enemies tremble. They would feel a chill in their hearts. Chu Yang clearly remembered that he had once said these words to his brothers in the lower 3 heavens. "I will rush to the heavens together with you guys one day. We will write our legends in the heavenly imperial court." GMO and Luo Kadi had always remembered these words. This was the common goal of the brothers in the heavenly armament pavilion. It was their greatest wish. GMO and Luo Kadi had finally realized the gap between them and their brothers. Therefore, they had been chasing after them and working hard. They didn't want to fall behind. And they didn't want to drag their brothers down. They wanted to use their own efforts to catch up with them. They would desperately fight and desperately improve themselves. Everything was for the ultimate goal, to stand at the peak with their brothers and laugh proudly at the heavens. They would rather die in the process of improving themselves than be eliminated. GMO had faced 7 king-level experts in the battle a moment ago. This was a sure-death situation. However, he had crazily attacked like a madman. His shout was like thunder. I want my brothers to be proud of me. I don't want my brothers to die for me. They will be ashamed for me. You will be in my legend if I become a legend one day. I will be in your legend if you become a legend one day. I will be by your side when you stand at the peak. I will overlook the world with you. I will dominate the world. I will be in your legend. I will be in your legend. These were the words that Chu Yang had spoken from the bottom of his heart. And GMO had remembered them without missing a word. His aura would fiercely erupt every time he shouted these words. It seemed as if these words were a panacea for him. They were endless courage and endless fighting spirit. Chu Yang could hear that GMO's heart was filled with unwillingness and grievance every time he shouted these words. It was an extreme desire to become stronger. GMO's heart was filled with tears when he shouted these words. I don't want to fall behind my brothers. GMO's heart was screaming. He hadn't shouted these words. However, Chu Yang could hear them. Can you blame GMO for the disparity in talent? Why are people divided into 3 classes because of talent? GMO's heart was screaming. Therefore, he was going all out. He was going all out. My talent can't be compared to my brother's. So, I will use my efforts to make up for it. Even if I have to train myself to death. I don't have that kind of world-defying talent. I can only rely on my hard work and sweat. I will chase after them and surpass them. Luo Kudi was the same on the other side. Luo Kudi's body was riddled with scars. These were the results of dozens of battles. His whole body was filled with a murderous aura. A sharp aura was emitted from his body. He was like a completely different person from the previous Luo Kudi. He was also shouting and screaming in a battle. He was extremely crazy. GMO's crazy shouting could also be heard from Luo Kudi's mouth. That kind of sullen shouting, that kind of unwillingness to submit to the heavens and the earth, that kind of will to charge forward even if it means death, it was the same. I don't want to be a burden because I have brothers. My brothers will be implicated if I am weak. They might even die because of me. They can do it. I can do it too. I can do it. If I die, I die. If I don't die, I will charge forward. I will fight alongside my brothers. I will make my brothers proud of me. I am not a trash. I don't want to be looked down upon. I don't want to be said to have no future. Even a supreme martial artist won't do. GMO and Luo Kudi seem to have been completely reborn in a short period of more than a month. These 2 originally pampered sons of aristocratic families who were just idling around, waiting to die, had completely transformed into 2 iron-blooded warriors at this moment. Where was the air of debauchery to be found on them? Where was the habit of debauchery? There was only valiance. Iron-blooded. Fearless of death. They only had the fighting spirit to conquer the world and not hesitate to die. I can do it. I can definitely do it. Chu Yang left quietly. When he left, he felt hot blood rushing in his chest. His mood was surging. There were tears in his eyes. My brothers, I am proud of you right now. Do you know? Gu Duxing and Dong Wushang also came to check on Luo Kudi and GMO from time to time. Chu Yang was worried about his 2 brothers. How could the 2 of them be at ease? But every time, the 2 of them came quietly and left quietly. When they came, their faces were full of worry. When they left, their faces were heavy. Their eyes were full of tears. Brothers, you will succeed. Brothers, we are proud of you right now. You are worth it. To have such brothers, this life is not in vain. The 2 of them also fell into an even more desperate fight. They went to fight spirit beasts when there was no one around. We can't wait. If we wait for them, they will catch up with us. But it will only bring shame to our brothers. Brothers are risking their lives. So we must also work hard. These two kings of saber and sword had also suddenly erupted with their potential. And they fell into a crazy fight. Chu Yang left quietly. His heart was heavy the whole way. He was very distressed. Chapter 546. Chu Yang's body movements were light as he moved forward. In this month he didn't fight much. Most of his time was spent on collecting herbs and consolidating his cultivation. This was because Chu Yang realized that there were too many ice-type elixirs in this northern wilderness. Moreover, no one was digging for them. This was simply a natural elixir storehouse. Especially under the mysterious ice, there would be one or a few elixirs that couldn't be seen from the outside almost every once in a while. Besides Chu Yang, there was no second person in the world who could come to this place. Therefore, Chu Yang collected a lot of elixirs every day during this period of time. During this period of time, Chu Yang used his fastest speed to collect the treasures under the ground. With the probing function of the Tribulation Sword's sword tip, Chu Yang's hands went soft. However, he still only collected half of it. No, it should be said that it was only a small half. What surprised Chu Yang the most was that he even dug out a piece of star body from the mysterious ice. This was a good thing that had never appeared on this continent. After Chu Yang kept it in the tribulation space, even the sword spirit was amazed. He circled it a few times but couldn't find anything special about it. He also soaked it in the quenching spring once every 3 days. Today, it was exactly 1 month. It finally came to an end. The Tribulation Sword's sword tip and sword blade also flew out of the quenching spring and entered Chu Yang's dantian. Only the sword tip was left soaking in it to make up for the loss in probing for elixirs for Chu Yang during this period of time. The sword spirit also ended the day of quenching the quenching spring. The next quenching would have to wait until Chu Yang reached the monarch level before he could soak it together with the sword tip. Chu Yang clearly felt that the 3 parts of the Tribulation Sword had undergone subtle changes. It seemed to be more and more spiritual. It was more and more satisfying to use. The sword tip and sword blade were more murderous and evil spirit. It seemed that the sharpness that had been buried for 10,000 years had completely recovered after soaking in the quenching spring. The sword spirit's body was no different from a real person. Sometimes Chu Yang would be curious. It didn't pass through the void like before. Instead, it had a strange texture. The sword spirit was extremely satisfied with the current situation. He was grinning from ear to ear every day. The tribulation space was now filled with resources. Vitality Spring, Tempering Spring, Profound Ice Jade Paste, Profound Yang Jade Essence, Countless Profound Jade Ice Crystals, Profound Yang Jade, Jade Snow Spirit Ginseng, Sea of Fire Amethyst Spirit Mushroom, and countless spirit herbs that he had just obtained from under the profound ice. There were also countless strange metals and forging materials. The sword spirit was like a miser. Every day, he would do some calculations and then smile in satisfaction. Damn, there are so many good things here. Even the previous 8 masters of Calamity Sword didn't have such a complete collection. This guy was a freak. Sword Spirit looked at Chu Yang and muttered in his heart. Chu Yang flew all the way and rushed towards the place where Tan Tan had sent the message. He had arrived just in time. Tan Tan was extremely angry at the moment. But he was helpless. That was because this place seemed to be a natural formation. So, a noob like Tan Tan would only be able to enter and not come out if no one was to guide him. For 2 consecutive days, Tan Tan was so hungry that his stomach had turned soft. But there was still no one around. This was all due to his strange physique. This guy couldn't eat meat or rice at all. He couldn't eat anything even if he were to starve to death. Furthermore, the amount of spirit beast cores he ate had also increased from 3 to 4 per meal. This was even more miserable. How could he endure being hungry for 2 consecutive days? Tan Tan was leaning against a rock on the 3rd day. He was seeing stars. His eyes were shining as he looked all around. He longed to pass by a spirit beast. Tan Tan would have dashed forward to fight with it regardless of his own safety and take its core. However, there wasn't even a third level one. Tan Tan didn't even have the strength to curse at people when night fell. That hateful little guy finally appeared at this time. He looked at Tan Tan from afar in a sneaky manner. His face was full of complacency and pleasure after taking revenge. This guy was Rui Butong. And this natural formation of the northern wilderness was the place where the stealing god and thieving ghosts sect was located. It was said to be a sect. But these two people had accidentally entered this place. And they had obtained a secret book from this place. Then, they had returned to the Jianghu after they had practiced here. This was the origin of the name Stealing God and Thieving Ghost. Every 2 years, they would return to this place. So, they had brought Rui Butong here this time. And they wanted to help their treasured disciple improve his strength. Rui Butong was also depressed. He had been here for several months. And he had been constantly preparing things. He had been constantly adjusting his condition. Then he had been waiting for the right time to open the seal. So he could go in and improve his strength. But he hadn't expected that he would be caught and beaten up one day. And the other party was a king-level expert. This beating had left Rui Butong in a miserable state. He had almost finished his preparations. And he had almost adjusted his body. But he had been beaten until he was dizzy. And his internal energy had been in a mess. So he had been beaten up. After all, he hadn't suffered any internal injuries. So he would be fine in a few days. But he hadn't expected that the guy who had beaten him would ask him for directions after he had beaten him up. Wasn't he looking for a beating? Therefore, Rui Butong had casually pointed out a path. And he had taken advantage of the fact that this idiot was happily walking away. Then he had stolen everything that this idiot had on him. I can't beat you. But I will make you bankrupt. Rui Butong had bitterly thought. Rui Butong had discovered that he had become rich after he had stolen everything. He had truly become rich. There were at least 1,000 cores of 4th grade and above spirit beasts inside. This was a huge fortune. And Rui Butong was even more baffled by what had happened next. This guy didn't bring any food? And he doesn't seem to eat meat? Is he going to starve to death here? Rui Butong found it extremely strange. Crap. Is there such a person in this world? He is truly the #1 idiot in the world. There weren't any large high-level spirit beasts here. But there were still snow rabbits, snow chickens, snow sheep, and so on. Rui Butong couldn't believe that there was a king-level expert guarding so much food. How could he starve to death? Rui Butong had no choice but to sigh at how big the world was. Seeing that this guy was so hungry that he had no strength left, Rui Butong cautiously poked his head out from behind the stone. Hey, why aren't you eating? Are you stupid? Tan Tan was so hungry that he was dizzy. So, he became angry when he heard this. He scolded weakly, "You're the stupid one. Damn it. How could I not eat if there was food? Do you think I'm as stupid as you?" He opened his eyes after he had finished speaking. And he immediately became angry. He shouted, "So, it's you, bastard. Give me back my baggage." Rui Butong shrank his neck. He felt that this guy was getting more and more interesting. He was so hungry that his legs had turned soft. But he still dared to show off his power? "What can you do if I don't return it?" Rui Butong snorted. He felt relieved when he saw that this guy didn't pounce on him. "You don't want to return it?" Tan Tan said angrily, "Those are my things. Why don't you return them?" Rui Butong came out from behind the stone. He sat on the stone, crossed his legs, and said, "Yes, they were yours when they were in your arms. But they became mine when they were in my arms." He looked at Tan Tan from the corner of his eyes. "You say that these things are yours. What proof do you have? You call them. If they answer, I will return them to you." Tan Tan almost went mad with anger. "Bastard! These are dead things. How can they answer? Do you think that they can pant and fart like you? That can't prove that they are yours." Rui Butong burst into laughter. He took out the baggage and shook it. Then he stuffed it back into his bosom. Tan Tan was furious. He suddenly stood up. Then he pounced on Rui Butong like lightning with a schwa sound. However, Rui Butong was the true disciple of Stealing God and Thieving Ghost. So, there was nothing to say about his agility. Tan Tan had lost a lot of his vitality due to hunger. So, how could he catch up with him? Rui Butong's body spun, and he was already more than 100 feet away. Then he mischievously laughed. Idiot! I will return your baggage to you as long as you kneel down and kowtow to Grandpa Rui 3 times. Then you say that you were wrong 3 times. Rui Butong laughed complacently. Bullshit. The older generation never kneels. Tan Tan got angry. Tan Tan looked up to the sky and sighed in extreme anger. I am the most handsome man in the world. I am handsome and elegant. But I have never thought that I would suffer such humiliation in this northern wilderness. What? Rui Butong suddenly tumbled to the ground. Then he raised his head from the snow-covered ground. He looked at Tan Tan's extremely ugly face in disbelief. It could be said that there was nothing good about his face. He then stammered, You? The most handsome man? Handsome, confident, and elegant? What? Tan Tan raised his head. Don't tell me that Grandpa Tan is not handsome? Grandpa Tan had even forgotten about his hunger when it came to the issue of beauty and ugliness. Starving to death is a small matter. But my reputation is the most important thing. Who would dare to snatch the title of handsome man from me? Wah! Rui Butong shouted loudly. He laughed so hard that tears almost came out of his eyes. Such an ugly freak dares to say that he is the most handsome man? The most handsome man in the world? This is hilarious to a certain extent. Then Rui Butong was stunned. What's your surname? Grandpa Tan? What Grandpa Tan? Rui Butong recalled that Big Brother Chu's junior brother was called Tan Tan. Moreover, he was also very narcissistic. He had heard this name countless times when they were together. It could be said that it reverberated like thunder in his ears. Rui Butong couldn't help but feel that something was wrong when he heard this extremely ugly and narcissistic guy say that his surname was Tan. I can't have met Big Brother Chu's junior brother, right? This Grandpa Tan's name is Tan Tan. Legend has it that the most handsome man in the world is Tan Tan. I am Tan Tan. I am the most handsome man in the world, Tan Tan. Tan Tan straightened his neck and roared. When he said this, he was full of energy and his face was flushed. He looked arrogant and proud. He didn't look like a person who had been hungry for 3 days. It's really... Rui Butong was shocked. He suddenly felt that he was in a difficult position. Damn, it's really Big Brother's junior brother. What should I do? Rui Butong scratched his head. With a sullen face he said, So, it's you. You recognize me? This time, it was Tan Tan's turn to be surprised. You've also heard of my handsome and elegant name? He shook his head and suddenly felt proud. I'm really a legend. Even the barbarians of the northern wilderness have heard of my name. First update. When I looked at it, I spat out a mouthful of blood. Yesterday, I said that I wanted a surprise. I didn't expect that I would get a shock today. The monthly votes had exploded. Moreover, it looked like it was going to explode twice in a row. The recommendation votes were so slippery that they couldn't be seen. That you're tuning in to the Han Lee's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.